Chapter 3590. Lord 3 Pure. That Zhuowen should have just left 3 Pure Street. If we go out now, we might be able to find him. I'll go with you. Xiao Huanyu hurriedly said. In. Then let's go together. I hope we can find Zhuowen in advance. Otherwise, he'll be in big trouble. 3 Pure nodded. With a wave of his sleeve, the 4 of them disappeared from the exit of 3 Pure Street. Brother Du, Brother Jiang. Why are you at the exit? After Xiao Huanyu followed 3 Pure, he immediately saw Du Huaqian and Jiang Ruisi at the exit. However, the 2 of them were in a strange state. They were actually standing on the spot, motionless, as if they were hit by a body immobilization technique. 3 Pure's eyes narrowed. With a wave of his sleeve, Du Huaqian and Jiang Ruisi immediately regained their mobility. Phew! Du Huaqian and Jiang Ruisi heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly bowed to 3 Pure to express their thanks. 3 Pure waved his hand. His gaze landed on the starry sky in front of him. There, a figure calmly floated in the starry sky. His back was straight like a spear, and around this figure, there were 6 figures with incomparably vast and terrifying auras that were rapidly closing in on it. Each of these 6 figures had a terrifying aura. They were all 4th Earth's Blight experts. Space-time Beast Race, Dragon Race, Black Tiger Race, Phoenix People, Mermaid Race, and the 2nd floor master of the Wu Tower, Wu Yangshua? No, that's Zhuowen. They're surrounding Zhuowen. Lian Meng, who was standing beside 3 Pure Ones, immediately recognized the 6 figures with terrifying auras. She also saw Zhuowen, who was surrounded by the 6 supreme experts. Lian Meng's emotions fluctuated greatly. She hurriedly looked at 3 Pure and said, Master, quickly save Zhuowen. He's no match for these 6 people. He'll die. Xiao Huanyu's pupils shrank to the size of needles. He was completely dumbfounded as he muttered to himself, No way. Isn't this a little too exaggerated? The Desolate Street actually sent out 6 ancestor-level powerhouses. Xiao Huanyu really did not expect that the Desolate Street would actually value Zhuowen so much that they would not hesitate to send out such a huge lineup. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. He knew that Zhuowen was definitely going to die. It was impossible for him to survive by luck. Anyone the 6 patriarchs could easily kill him. Although Zhuowen was much stronger than him, he still didn't think that Zhuowen would be a match for a 4th Blight expert. Moreover, amongst the 6 of them, there was a peak 4th Blight expert like Wu Yangshua. How were they supposed to fight? Moreover, Xiao Huanyu could also see that the 6 old ancestors were too close to Zhuowen. Even if the 3 Pure Ones took action now, it would be too late. Zhuowen's fate was already decided. There was no suspense. Du Huaqian and Jiang Ruisi's faces turned pale as they shook their heads inwardly. They had already seen through the situation and knew that if Zhuowen didn't have more ultimate Hanin flames, he would definitely die this time. Of course, a terrifying energy like the ultimate Hanin flame was simply too rare. Just now, Zhuowen had used it and killed the Corpse Ghost Clan's ancestor by surprise. In their opinion, Zhuowen shouldn't have any more trump cards like the ultimate Hanin flame. The 3 Pure Ones frowned. He shook his head and said, It's too late. The distance is too far. When I rush over, the 6 of them will be enough to tear Zhuowen into pieces. Lian Meng's pretty face turned pale. Her lips trembled, and her delicate body trembled. Asterisk crash. Asterisk finally, the strongest attacks of the 6 old ancestors all landed on Zhuowen's body. The terrifying light was like a blazing sun that fell and exploded. The light spread throughout the entire starry sky, as if everything in the surroundings had turned into day and was no longer dark. At the same time, within the blazing light, a strange white flame surged. It was like a white python that suddenly jumped out and constantly swallowed the light around it. Suddenly, a scream rang out. Then, a figure flew out of the light. The figure was completely enveloped by the white flame. As he flew out, his physical body was constantly disintegrating. In the end, he was annihilated before everyone's eyes. It's the Black Tiger Clan's ancestor. Xiao Huanyu's eyes widened as he exclaimed. However, Before he could finish speaking, two more figures were enveloped by the white flame and flew out. Their bodies also gradually dissipated under the flames. The Dragon Clan's ancestor and the Mermaid Clan's ancestor, they actually, Du Huacan and Jiang Ruisi, also reacted. When they saw the two figures, they almost cried out in surprise. Lian Ming's beautiful eyes became brighter and brighter. She saw the fourth and fifth figures fly out of the light. They were the Phoenix People's ancestor and the Space-Time Beast Clan's ancestor. The two ancestors' bodies were disintegrating. Their miserable screams continued to ring out. It was simply too tragic. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk the moment the Phoenix People and Space-Time Beast Clan's ancestor flew out. The endless light was completely devoured by the white flame. In the center of the endless white flame, a deep passage was formed. A figure slowly walked out of it like a god. "You want to kill me, Zhuowen? You're not qualified." Zhuowen slowly walked to the front of the white flame. Then, the white flame behind him suddenly formed a terrifying flame vortex that violently spun and tore apart. Within the flame vortex, muffled groans could be heard. It was Wu Yangshuo of the Shaman Tower who was trapped in the flame vortex formed by the ultimate Hanin flames. He was struggling to resist the suppression of the ultimate Hanin flames. At this moment, none of the 5 ancestors who were sent flying were spared. All of their bodies and souls were burned by the ultimate Hanin flame. Zhuowen calmly raised his head and turned around. Looking at the flame vortex behind him, he frowned slightly. Within the flame vortex, he could faintly see Wu Yangshuo's figure, struggling to resist the corrosion of the flames. Zhuowen was a little surprised. This Wu Yangshuo was really not ordinary. He was the one who endured the most power of the ultimate Hanin flames. Yet he was still able to hold on until now. As expected of the second strongest person in the Shaman Tower. How was this possible? Zhuowen, how can you have so much ultimate Hanin flames? Wu Yangshuo roared. His eyes were red as if he had gone mad. He was truly stunned. The amount of Hanin flames that Zhuo, when released, surpassed the amount of Hanin flames formed by a normal 5th blight. Even an early 5th blight cultivator would find it difficult to endure being surrounded by Hanin flames like this. Don't worry, I still have more ultimate Hanin flames. They're all reserved for you. Zhuowen flicked his finger. An even fiercer white flame surged out from the golden ring on his finger and instantly rushed into the flame vortex. Instantly, the flame vortex's power increased by several times. Wu Yangshuo let out a miserable cry and completely lost all signs of life. He had actually been burned to death by the flames. Standing at the exit, 3 pure ones trembled. An indescribable ripple finally appeared in his calm eyes. Xiao Huanyu, Du Huacan, Jiang Ruisi, Lian Ming, and the others were all dumbfounded and fell into a long silence. Chapter 3591. Oh my God! Wu Yangshuo and the other 5 ancestor-level experts were killed just like that? Xiao Huanyu was the first to react. His legs were trembling. If it weren't for the last bit of reason left in him, he would have knelt down. He recalled that he'd actually made a move against Zhuowen just now. This couldn't be described as being ignorant of the immensity of heaven and earth. It was purely courting death. Fortunately, Zhuowen didn't kill him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be alive right now. Brother Xiao, you're wrong. Zhuowen didn't kill 6 ancestor-level experts, but 7. Before you came, he had already killed the ancestor of the Corpse Ghost Clan. Du Huacan and Jiang Ruisi also came back to their senses and corrected Xiao Huanyu. Xiao Huanyu's mouth was wide open. He immediately smiled bitterly and said, "He really lives up to his reputation. Although Zhuowen's cultivation is similar to mine, he can already fight with a 5th blight expert." 3 pure ones remained silent from the beginning to the end. He silently looked at Zhuowen with a complicated look in his eyes and his eyelids twitching slightly. Zhuowen's progress was too fast, completely beyond his expectations. But soon, 3 pure ones calmed down. In his opinion, Zhuowen's only reliance was the ultimate Yin fire. This fire was indeed terrifying, but it might not be able to hurt him. After all, his cultivation had reached the peak of the 5th blight, and he was an expert standing at the peak of the heaven accessing place. After Zhuowen killed Wu Yangshuo, he flicked his finger and used the golden ring to collect the remaining ultimate Yin fire. After discovering that there wasn't much ultimate Yin fire left in the ring, Zhuowen felt quite pained. In the battle just now, he had once again used 1/3 of the ultimate Yin fire. Now, there really wasn't much ultimate Yin fire left in the ring. After doing this, Zhuowen's gaze fell on the white-haired Taoist at the exit of Sanqing Street. He nodded slightly, turned into a streamer, and left the place. He left just like that. Xiao Huanyu, Du Huaqian, and Jiang Ruisi were dumbfounded. The three pure ones were at least the rulers of the three pure streets. They held high positions and were deeply respected by countless practitioners in the heaven accessing place. This Zhuowen's attitude was actually so arrogant. He only nodded and left. Wasn't that too rude? Master, why didn't you make him stay? He had killed Wu Yangshuo and the others, and Wu Taiji would soon find out. At that time, Wu Taiji would definitely not let this matter rest. Right now, he's in great danger. Lian Ming said with a complicated expression. Three pure ones said calmly. Lian Ming, can't you tell? The current Zhuowen is not as weak as you think. Besides, he has the ultimate Yin fire of Han. If Wu Taiji and I don't do anything, no one in the heaven accessing place can do anything to him. And if Wu Taiji really is shameless enough to attack, I won't just stand by and watch. You don't have to worry too much about him. Let's go back to the palace of three purities. As he spoke, three pure ones looked deeply in the direction that Zhuowen had left. He knew that Zhuowen must have gone to the nightmare abyss to look for the scorpion worm. Lian Ming hesitated for a moment and nodded. Three pure ones was right. The strength that Zhuowen had just displayed was indeed terrifying. Even Wu Yangshuo, the second in command of the Wu Tower, had been killed. Then, in the heaven accessing place, there were only a few people who could kill Zhuowen. Xiao Huanyu, Du Huaqian, and Jiang Ruisi followed closely behind, their eyes surging with excitement. They had secretly recorded this battle with a crystal ball. The moment the crystal ball spread, the whole heaven accessing place would be shaken. Bang! In the Wu Tower, Wu Taiji slammed the table in front of him, smashing it into pieces. Dead? They're all dead? How could Zhuowen have killed Wu Yangshuo and the others? Wu Taiji's eyes were red. He looked at the sorcerer tribe practitioner kneeling in front of him and roared at the top of his lungs. The sorcerer tribe practitioner knelt on the ground, his forehead covered in cold sweat. When he learned that Wu Yangshuo and the other 6 ancestors had died, he felt that it was unbelievable. Tower Master, according to our intelligence, Zhuowen's cultivation seems to be around the 3rd blight, but he has a terrifying flame. He used this flame to turn the tables and kill Wu Yangshuo and the others. The sorcerer tribe practitioner said hesitantly, "What kind of flame is it?" Wu Taiji calmed down. He took a deep breath and asked coldly, "The ultimate Yin flame." The sorcerer tribe practitioner said in a low voice, "The ultimate Yin flame? How could this little bastard have such a flame?" Wu Taiji frowned, his heart skipping a beat. He knew that if Zhuowen really had the ultimate Yin flame, Wu Yangshuo and the others were indeed no match for Zhuowen. The ultimate Yin flame was the ultimate blight energy that appeared when a practitioner was going through the 5th blight. Its power was extremely terrifying. Once this flame appeared, any practitioner below the 5th blight would find it hard to resist. Where did Zhuowen go after that? Wu Taiji asked in a slightly irritated tone. It seems like he went to the nightmare abyss. The sorcerer tribe practitioner said, "Send people to monitor the nightmare abyss. The moment Zhuowen leaves the nightmare abyss, inform me immediately. This kid is a huge disaster. We must get rid of him as soon as possible." A sense of danger rose in Wu Taiji's heart. This Zhuowen's improvement was too fast. Last time, many 3rd blight practitioners worked together to kill this kid. Not only were they unable to kill him, but they were also killed by him. And now Wu Yangshuo led 6 ancestors to kill him again, but they were also killed by this kid. Not long after the two attacks, this kid's strength had undergone an earth-shattering change. This speed of growth made Wu Taiji feel fear in his heart. Yes, the sorcerer tribe practitioner nodded and slowly left. Not long after the sorcerer tribe practitioner left, Wu Xiangjuan silently appeared in the room. Wuji, even if that Zhuowen appears from the nightmare abyss, you won't have a chance to attack. 3 pure ones, those old farts, won't let you attack. Wu Xiangjuan said. Wu Taiji rubbed his temples and said with a slight headache, Xiangjuan, how could I not know? But Zhuowen must die. His improvement is too fast. If we don't kill him as soon as possible, he will become the second 3 pure ones. At that time, our great desolate street will be in danger. Wu Xiangjuan frowned. Taiji, I know about this even if you don't say it. But that Zhuowen was able to kill Wu Yang Shua, which means that he has at least the strength of an early 5th Blight practitioner. Unless you attack, no one in the great desolate street is his match. Wu Taiji coldly snorted, Humph. This kid was able to kill Wu Yang Shua because he relied on the Hanin flame. Once he loses this, he won't even be a match for a 4th Blight practitioner. But this kid was able to get the Hanin flame, which means that he has some methods. Also, we don't know if he still has such a flame. If he still has it, no matter how many assassins we send, it will be useless, Wu Xiangjuan said. Chapter 3592. What about the 3 pure ones? Wu Xiangjuan asked. Wu Taiji sneered. A few days ago, I received another message from Lord Binghui. It said that he's come out of seclusion early and is now on his way to our galaxy. Wu Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes were filled with excitement. Really? I thought Lord Binghui would take a long time to come out of seclusion. I didn't expect it to be so soon. As long as Lord Binghui comes, the 3 pure ones won't dare to interfere. Besides, the 3 pure ones are only pretending to be obedient. Lord Binghui already knows about it. When the time comes, those old guys will have to bear the consequences. Wu Taiji sneered. Outside the nightmare abyss, a crowd was surging. Zhuowen stood in a floating square and stared at the stone statue of a woman standing in front of him. The stone statue of a woman was extremely beautiful. It had a human body and a snake tail. Its eyes, in particular, shone with a strange light. The stone statue of a woman was the entrance to the nightmare abyss. Zhuowen stared at the eyes of the stone statue of a woman. He saw a strange, purple light. Then, he felt the world spin. Then, he was enveloped by the purple light and disappeared from the square. Not long after Zhuowen entered the nightmare abyss, several figures came from the direction of the Chaos Street. They were all sorcerer tribe cultivators. After they landed in the square, they disguised themselves as street vendors and set up their stalls near the stone statue. They shouted for business as if nothing had happened. When Zhuowen opened his eyes, he found that he was in the ruins of a ruined hall. At this moment, there were many cultivators coming and going. Zhuowen knew that he had entered the nightmare abyss. The environment inside the nightmare abyss was not much different from the outside world. The only difference was that he could feel a mysterious power inside. This power was suppressing his divine soul, causing him to feel a faint stabbing pain. Zhuowen looked around and found that other than the ruins of the hall, there was a passage leading to the depths of the abyss. There were stone pillars on both sides of the passage, and the top of the stone pillars flickered with a dim light. Other than the dim light, the passage was completely dark. Zhuowen also noticed that most of the cultivators were exploring the ruins of the hall. Almost no one entered the passage. The area of the ruins was very large, almost equivalent to a large city with a population of 10 million. Zhuowen had a headache. From the jade strip that Lin Meng had given him, he knew that Sai's corpse was placed in the nightmare nunnery in the depths of the nightmare abyss. Other than that, the jade slip did not provide a route to the nightmare nunnery. This made Zhuowen feel a little helpless. He could not possibly search for the nightmare nunnery like a headless fly after entering this place, right? Look, isn't that circling Tianhan? He publicly acknowledged as the strongest expert of the 3 Purities Street's new generation. It's said that he's a peerless genius with the greatest hope of catching up to Lord Three Purities in the future. He actually came to the Nightmare Abyss. Don't you know? It's said that Rao Tian Han wants to barge into the Nightmare Nunnery and seize the corpse of ancestral Shaman Sai. It's said that it's because of the promise of the Three Pure Ones. In the past, the Three Pure Ones once said that if anyone could bring him CZ's corpse in Nightmare Nunnery, he would promise that person a favor. Everyone knows that Rao Tian Han likes Lian Ming. He's probably going to the Nightmare Nunnery to seize CZ's corpse because of Lian Ming. Suddenly, a clamor sounded in the surroundings. Zhuowen looked in the direction of the sound and saw a figure standing quietly at the entrance of the hall's only passageway. From his posture, it was obvious that they were preparing to enter the depths of the passageway. This was a rather young man who carried an ice blue divine sword on his back. His short hair that reached his shoulders hung down loosely, and his entire body emitted a sharp light that was difficult to look at. Rao Tianhan didn't wait for long before two more figures came over and walked to his side. These two figures were a man and a woman. The man was very tall and sturdy and was bald. The woman's appearance was very ordinary. She looked to be around 30 years old, but her chest was very full, and her figure was even more hot. It's Tang Taihong and Mei Jinwen. These two people are the second and third experts of the Three Purities Street's new generation. Are these three experts really going to the Nightmare Nunnery? Everyone was surprised, and the discussion was extremely heated. Brother Tang, Miss Mei, I might have to trouble the two of you this time. Rao Tianhan nodded at the two and said rather solemnly. Tang Taihong laughed and said, compared to your favor, what's the big deal about the Nightmare Nunnery? After all, there will definitely be a place for you in the heaven-accessing secret land in the future. I'm investing in you in advance. Mei Jinwen rebuked Tianhan, who being a little unreasonable. I'm obviously unparalleled in beauty, and I'm better than Lian Ming in every way. You're actually willing to go to the Nightmare Nunnery for her. I'm very sad. Rao Tianhan's face darkened, and he said, All right, stop fooling around. The Nightmare Nunnery is the most dangerous place in the Nightmare Abyss. Even if the three of us join forces, we still have to be careful. We can't be careless. Tang Taihong and Mei Jinwen stopped joking, and their faces became solemn. They knew how terrifying the Nightmare Abyss was, and there were even rumors that there were unprecedented terrors in the Nightmare Abyss. The Nightmare Nunnery was the core of the Nightmare Abyss, and there was no need to mention how terrifying it was. Even if Rao Tianhan didn't say it, they didn't dare to neglect it. Just as the three of them were about to set off, a figure stopped them. Who are you? Why are you blocking the way? Rao Tianhan looked at the young man in front of him, frowned slightly, and said with some displeasure, I recognize you. Aren't you Zhuowen, the one who's been talking about in the heaven-accessing secret land recently? Didn't you escape from the heaven-accessing secret land? Why are you still here now? Mei Jinwen sized up Zhuowen and immediately said Zhuowen's identity. He's Zhuowen, the one who's been famous recently? He doesn't look particularly powerful. He's very ordinary. As soon as Mei Jinwen said this, the surrounding crowd was in an uproar, and there was a lot of discussion. Rao Tianhan's gaze was strange. He had heard of Zhuowen's deeds. It was said that some time ago, the Wizard Clan, the Corpse Clan, the Spacetime Beast Clan, the Dragon Clan, the Black Tiger Clan, the Phoenix People, and the Mermaid Clan sent out a team. There were a total of 7 people in this team, and all of them were powerhouses above the Third Blight. They surrounded and killed Zhuowen together. But in the end, not only did they not kill Zhuowen, but 5 of them were killed, and 2 of them fled. After this battle, Zhuowen's name shook the entire heaven-accessing secret land, and everyone knew about him. Of course, Zhuowen had just killed Wu Yangshuo and the others, so very few cultivators in the heaven-accessing secret land knew that Zhuowen had experienced a second encirclement. The cultivators of the Nightmare Abyss didn't even know. If they knew that Zhuowen had single-handedly killed a team of 7 Fourth Blight powerhouses, including Wu Yangshuo, who was at the peak of the Fourth Blight, their expressions would only be more interesting. After Rao Tianhan sized up Zhuowen, he calmed down and said, Taoist Zhuowen, I know you're very famous recently, but I don't know why you're blocking my way when we have no enmity. Zhuowen being able to kill 7 third blight powerhouses really interested Rao Tianhan, but he wasn't afraid. He was the strongest person of the new generation on the Sanqing Street, and his cultivation had reached the early 4th blight. Chapter 3593. Zhuowen cupped his fists and said, I also want to go to Nightmare Nunnery, but I don't know its exact location. I heard that the 3 of you want to go to Nightmare Nunnery, so I have a presumptuous request. Rao Tianhan looked at Zhuowen and said coldly, You want to go to Nightmare Nunnery with us? Rao Tianhan's main purpose of going to Nightmare Nunnery was ancestral shaman-sized corpse. Zhuowen also wanted to go to Nightmare Nunnery for the ancestral shaman's corpse. Don't worry, I'm not interested in the ancestral shaman's corpse. Zhuowen smiled. The ancestral shaman's corpse was indeed not of much use to him. What he wanted was the ancestral shaman's venomous worms. Oh, then what's your purpose in going to Nightmare Nunnery? I'm sure you've heard of the dangers there. Although you fought one against 7 and defeated 7 third blight experts from the Great Desolate Street, your strength wasn't ordinary. But in Nightmare Nunnery, your strength is still not enough. Even I might be in danger of dying, let alone you. Do you still plan to go? Rao Tianhan shook his head. Why not? Zhuowen smiled faintly. Rao Tianhan frowned slightly. He looked at Mei Jin and Tang Taihong beside him with an inquisitive look. He. Tianhan, just let him join. He's not weak. After all, he defeated 7 third blight powerhouses together. He must have his own unique points. Mei Jinwen chuckled. I don't care. Tang Taihong shrugged. All right, you can follow us, but you must listen to my orders. Rao Tianhan said. I won't act on my own when we're going to Nightmare Nunnery. Zhuowen said faintly. After the team was confirmed, Rao Tianhan led Zhuowen, Tang Taihong, and Mei Jinwen into the depths of the only passage in the ruins of the main hall and quickly disappeared into the darkness. Be careful, all of you. The Nightmare Abyss is completely different from the other danger zones. Most of the living beings here are formless soul bodies. These souls are best at seducing souls. If one's mind isn't strong enough, or if one's soul is weak, it's very easy to be seduced to death. After entering the depths of the tunnel, most of the areas were dark. Only a few faint lights flickered in the darkness. Rao Tianhan walked to the front and didn't forget to remind the 3 people behind him. Mei Jinwen and Tang Taihong's expressions had already become extremely solemn. When they entered the dark area in the depths of the tunnel, they could clearly feel gusts of cold wind surging around them. These chilly winds were very strange. They were shapeless and formless, but they could affect their souls, causing them to feel confused. They knew that these Yin winds should be the soul bodies that Rao Tianhan had mentioned. They had the ability to reel in souls. Thus, they kept their wits and slowly followed behind Rao Tianhan. Zhuowen walked at the back. When he entered the dark area, he had already discovered the souls in the surrounding Yin wind. He originally thought that the souls in the Yin wind would corrode Rao Tianhan's side and rush towards his glabella in an attempt to invade his soul. However, this wasn't the case. When the Yin wind formed by the souls was a few feet away from his body, they all circled around him as if they were afraid of him. In order to confirm his guess, Zhuowen took the initiative to approach the Yin wind. However, he discovered that the Yin wind fled a few feet away. They didn't want to come into contact with Zhuowen at all. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He knew that his guess was right. These Yin wind souls were indeed afraid of him. He looked ahead again and saw Rao Tianhan and the other 2 people who were constantly sweeping towards him. He knew that the reason these Yin winds were afraid of him wasn't because his soul was far stronger than the 3 of them, but because his soul contained the primordial stone. The primordial stone was too mysterious. Back then, the primordial stone had repaired his collapsed soul and had already fused with his soul, causing his soul to become extremely extraordinary. In addition, his soul had undergone an earth-shattering transformation. It was understandable that these winds formed by the souls were afraid of him. However, Zhuan was very low-key and tried his best not to come into contact with the surrounding winds. Therefore, Rao Tianhan and the other two didn't notice Zhuan's abnormality. Rao Tianhan and the others were all extraordinary people. Although the surrounding winds were getting stronger and stronger, they were still able to withstand it with their strength. The group of four shuttled through the darkness for nearly 5 days. Finally, Rao Tianhan stopped. We're about to reach the Nightmare Nunnery. All of you be careful. The winds around the Nightmare Nunnery are probably the most terrifying. It's said that a terrifying soul called the Nightmare Ghost will appear. Even a half-step heaven-breaking realm powerhouse can easily be played to death by the Nightmare Ghost if they're not careful. Rao Tianhan said in a deep voice. Mei Jinwen and Tang Taihong's expressions were solemn. They looked ahead at the same time. There, they could vaguely see a faintly discernible nunnery. This nunnery wasn't big. It occupied an area of at most 100 square meters. In the dark area, it emitted a faint light. The nunnery was surrounded by layers of black fog. The black fog churned, and the occasional gap that leaked out allowed Rao Tianhan and the others to clearly see the temple's appearance. However, most of the time, the temple was covered by the black fog, and it was difficult to clearly see its appearance. After Zhuan glanced at the faintly discernible Nightmare Nunnery, he focused all his attention on the black fog around the nunnery. He could faintly sense that the soul within the black fog was much more terrifying than the winds they'd encountered before. It was definitely not an ordinary soul energy. Rao Tianhan and the other two could clearly see the terror and extraordinariness of the black fog, so their expressions became extremely solemn. Fellow Taoist Zhua, this is the last step to enter the Nightmare Nunnery. It's also the most dangerous step. Your cultivation is the lowest among the four of us. If you continue to follow us, I'm afraid your life will be in danger. It's not too late for you to turn back now. Rao Tianhan suddenly turned to look at Zhuan. During this period of time, he had already sensed that Zhuan's specific cultivation was only at the late stage of the third decay. Rao Tianhan's cultivation was already at the early stage of the fourth decay. Although Mei Jinwen and Tang Taihong were inferior to him, they were also at the peak of the third decay. Their cultivations were much higher than Zhuan's. It's fine. I'll follow you into the Nightmare Nunnery. Perhaps, when you're in danger, I can help you, Zhuan said indifferently. Hearing this, Rao Tianhan frowned slightly. He was very dissatisfied with Zhuan's attitude. After all, he had kindly advised him for the sake of Zhuan, but this guy didn't appreciate it and even said that he could help him. He was thinking too highly of himself. Your cultivation is only at the late stage of the third decay, far inferior to the three of them. How can you help them? You'll only be a burden to them. Mei Jinwen smiled. Since fellow Taoist Zhua insists on following us into the Nightmare Nunnery, then we won't say anything. However, if fellow Taoist Zhua encounters any danger, we may be unable to help. The corners of Zhuan's mouth curled up slightly. It's fine. I'll take care of myself. There's no need for the three of you to worry about me. Chapter 3594. At the same time, the three of them each took out a golden talisman. The three talismans had a corresponding connection with each other. The golden light they emitted intertwined and formed a cone shape between the three of them, enveloping their surroundings. After the golden cone was formed, the surrounding winds didn't dare to approach the three of them and retreated. Zhuan silently watched the three of them leave. He also knew what Rao Tianhan was thinking. He felt that Zhuan was a burden, so he didn't want to bring him along when they reached the periphery of the Nightmare Nunnery. As for whether he lived or died, Rao Tianhan didn't care. Zhuan shook his head and smiled. From the beginning to the end, he really didn't want to rely on them. He only followed them because he wanted them to lead the way. Now that Rao Tianhan and the other two had left, it was a good thing for him. At least he didn't need to be as restrained as before. Zhuan stomped his right foot and shot toward the Nightmare Nunnery like an arrow leaving the bow. Wherever he passed, countless winds avoided him as if they had met their natural enemy. They didn't dare to approach Zhuowen at all. After a while, Zhuowen rushed into the black fog. What a powerful wind! The moment Zhuowen entered the black fog, waves of even more terrifying winds swept over. Furthermore, when these chilly winds rushed over, he could hear the cries of ghosts and howls of wolves. It was as if countless ferocious ghosts were screaming beside him. However, when these winds were about a foot away from Zhuowen, they let out shrill cries that were filled with fear. Then, they all circled around Zhuowen. Zhuowen didn't show any complacency. Instead, he revealed a solemn expression. The winds outside the black fog could only get a few feet away from him, but the winds inside the black fog could get a foot away from him. It was obvious that the winds inside the black fog were much more powerful than the winds outside. If there was an even more powerful soul body in the nightmare nunnery, it would probably be able to injure his divine soul. Thinking of this, Zhuowen didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. He followed the black fog and approached the nightmare nunnery. Soon, Zhuowen heard 3 screams not far away. Zhuowen wasn't unfamiliar with these 3 screams. They belonged to Rao Tianhan and the other 2. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. In the end, he rushed toward the screams. Soon, he saw Rao Tianhan and the other 2 at the end of the black fog, which was the area near the entrance of the nightmare nunnery. Rao Tianhan and the other 2's eyes were tightly shut. Their faces were pale, their bodies and trembling as they stood on the spot. Their foreheads were already covered in cold sweat, and even their backs were soaked with sweat. Zhuowen noticed that above Rao Tianhan and the other 2, there was a sinister face formed by black mist. It was hovering and emitting a bone-chilling laughter. Is this the nightmare that Rao? Zhuowen looked at the ferocious face formed by the black fog with a grave expression. When Zhuowen looked at the king of nightmares, the latter also noticed Zhuowen. The nightmare sneered. That eerie laughter became more and more terrifying and strange. Then, it instantly rushed out and silently appeared behind Zhuowen. It opened its mouth and directly swallowed Zhuowen. Zhuowen only felt his vision turn black. He realized that he seemed to have fallen into some kind of illusion. Various memories of the past flashed past his eyes, and these memories were constantly leading him to recall more things. These memories were like reincarnation, making him sink into them and unable to extricate himself. But soon, the huge purple lake in Zhuowen's divine soul suddenly exploded, and a magnificent aura spread out. It was also at this moment that the flashing memories completely stopped, and Zhuowen also opened his eyes at this moment. Huh, you actually escaped from my nightmare, illusory realm? At this moment, the nightmare was circling above Zhuowen's head, and Zhuowen was surrounded by a black fog. This black fog formed many black pythons, and they were constantly entangling Zhuowen. Boom! Zhuowen frowned slightly, and a magnificent aura exploded. A mysterious purple light surged from between his eyebrows, and it instantly shot out. The black pythons that were entangling him dissipated, and then the purple light was like a sword that shot into the sky and swept towards a nightmare formed by the black fog. Bam! The nightmare was caught off guard, and it was directly hit by the purple light, and it dissipated, screaming in pain. What kind of power is this? How can it suppress my nightmare's soul power? The nightmare's dissipated body quickly reformed, and it didn't dare to get close to Zhuowen, and it quickly moved away. However, Zhuowen wasn't going to let the nightmare go so easily. He mobilized the purple lake in his divine soul and condensed rays of purple light that shot out and enveloped the nightmare. The nightmare screamed again and again as it was continuously destroyed by the power of the purple light. In the end, it completely lost its aura. After the nightmare collapsed, the black fog that enveloped the nightmare nunnery kept rolling, and then it turned into gusts of cold wind that quickly dissipated. In an instant, the faintly discernible nightmare nunnery became much clearer. Zhuowen took a step forward and arrived at the entrance of the nightmare nunnery. He didn't hesitate and directly stepped into the nightmare nunnery. Not long after Zhuowen entered the nightmare nunnery, Rao Tianhan and the other two, who were originally trapped in the nightmare's illusion, finally slowly opened their eyes. The three of them looked at each other, and they were all covered in cold sweat. I'm afraid we were entangled by the nightmares just now. If we couldn't escape from the dreamland created by the nightmares in time, our souls would have been devoured by the nightmares, and we would have become mindless walking corpses. Rao Tianhan understood everything that had happened. His face was incomparably pale, and he muttered to himself with lingering fear. Mei Jinwen and Tang Taihong's expressions were even worse, and their hearts were filled with lingering fear. They knew that they had just walked through the gates of hell. The black fog around the nightmare nunnery has disappeared, and so has the nightmare. The reason why we were able to wake up is probably because someone removed the nightmare. Otherwise, we would still be in the illusion of the nightmare. Mei Jinwen suddenly reacted. Who was it that saved us and had the ability to destroy the nightmare? Tang Taihong revealed a thoughtful look and suddenly said, "Could it be that Zhuowen?" Rao Tianhan and Mei Jinwen were shocked at first, but then Rao Tianhan shook his head and said, "That's impossible. That Zhuowen's cultivation is even inferior to ours. How could he have the ability to destroy the nightmare?" Tianhan is right. That Zhuowen doesn't have the ability. It should be a senior who passed by and casually saved our lives, Mei Jinwen said in a deep voice. The two of you have reached the last step. The nightmare nunnery is close by. Are you willing to enter the nightmare nunnery with me? Rao Tianhan cupped his fists at Mei Jinwen and Tang Taihong. Chapter 3595. Brother Tang, what about you? Rao Tianhan's gaze fell on Tang Taihong. The latter's eyes flickered with hesitation. Brother Rao, I know my limits. I fell for that nightmare just now. If I enter the nightmare nunnery, I'll only be a burden to you, so I won't go in. Tang Taihong cupped his fists and said in a deep voice. Mei Jinwen frowned slightly and said in slight displeasure, Tang Taihong, in the beginning, you swore that you would enter nightmare nunnery with Tianhan, and you were full of heroism. Why are you scared now? Tang Taihong was slightly embarrassed. He touched his nose and fell silent. Enough. Jinwen, don't say any more. This is Brother Tang's decision. We should respect his choice. Rao Tianhan spoke. He cupped his hands at Tang Taihong and said, Brother Tang, since you've made up your mind, I won't force you. Let's part ways here. With that, Rao Tianhan simply led Mei Jinwen into the nightmare nunnery's entrance. Tang Taihong watched with a complicated gaze as Rao Tianhan and Mei Jinwen disappeared into the nightmare nunnery's entrance. He felt a little guilty. After all, he was the one who took the initiative to find Rao Tianhan and wanted to travel with him. Now, he was running away. It was indeed a little too much. Little guy, I heard that the corpse of the witch ancestor exists in the nightmare nunnery. Is this rumor true? Just as Tang Taihong was about to leave, a sinister voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Tang Taihong shivered. He actually didn't notice where the voice came from at all. It was as if it had appeared out of thin air beside his ears. Who are you? A terrifying aura suddenly erupted from Tang Taihong's body. He quickly retreated and spread out his divine sense, wanting to see who was playing tricks. But soon, his forehead was covered in cold sweat. No matter how his divine sense probed, he still couldn't find the source of the voice. I'm here. The eerie voice rang out again. Tang Taihong abruptly looked at the entrance of Nightmare Nunnery. A green-furred corpse stood there, its green eyes glaring eerily at him. You! Tang Taihong retreated again and stared at the green-furred mummy with apprehension. The fact that this green-furred corpse could appear near him without him noticing meant that it was at least at the fourth heaven's blight. The green-haired mummy was getting impatient. It grabbed at the air with its right hand, and Tang Taihong couldn't help but fly towards the mummy. Tang Taihong wanted to struggle, but he discovered that it was of no use. The strength of the green-haired mummy was completely unequal. The green-furred corpse grabbed Tang Taihong by the neck and lifted him up. It said indifferently, I'll ask you one more time. Does the corpse of an ancestral shaman really exist in this nightmare nunnery? Senior, don't kill me. The corpse of an ancestral shaman does exist in the nightmare nunnery. It's one of the 12 ancestral shamans. Ancestral shaman CZ. Tang Taiyong shivered. He already knew that the difference between him and this green-furred corpse was too great. TSK Tisk, that's good. Now come with me. The green-furred mummy cackled. Without waiting for Tang Taihong to refuse, it entered the nightmare nunnery. The world inside the nightmare nunnery was grotesque. All kinds of extraordinary lights constantly flickered in the surroundings. Moreover, as these lights flickered, strange and bizarre illusions appeared one after another. As Zhuowen walked through this strange space, his soul was enveloped by an illusory power at all times. What a powerful illusion! The entire nightmare nunnery is a pure illusion world. Zhuowen looked around at the grotesque scenery around him, and his gaze became more and more solemn. He had been in this space for some time, but he discovered that he couldn't walk out of the illusion around him at all. Apart from that, there were also powerful souls hidden in this illusion. These souls would quietly appear when one's soul wasn't clear-headed. They would enter one's soul and mercilessly attack it. Zhuowen's soul had always been clear-headed, so he wasn't targeted by those souls. However, with his sharp divine telekinesis, he could clearly sense the killing intent and ferociousness emitted by the souls hidden in the dark. These souls were like vultures. They were silently lying in wait, waiting for his soul to fall into chaos. Then, they would attack together and devour his soul completely. Zhuowen stopped. He looked at the grotesque world around him again and frowned. I can't continue like this. I have to break out of this illusion. Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. His eyes revealed a hint of coldness. Then he sat down cross-legged and began to mobilize his soul sword intent. Sword come. A blazing golden light surged between Zhuowen's eyebrows. It was as if it had materialized and gathered there. In the end, the blazing golden light left his glabella and formed a terrifying golden sword light. The terrifying sword intent soared into the sky and instantly spread throughout the entire space, causing the grotesque world to faintly tremble under this terrifying sword intent. Sword slash. Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes and exhaled a long breath. The golden sword light condensed between his eyebrows, soared into the sky, and mercilessly slashed upward. Bang! 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 The golden sword light continued to rush upward. Zhuowen's divine telekinesis clearly sensed that the souls hidden in the dark were collapsing under the golden sword light, bursting like balloons. Not only that, the entire grotesque space, under the impact of the sword light, began to tremble violently, as if it would collapse at any time. The boundaries of the space were being torn apart inch by the golden sword light, collapsing inch by inch and obliterating inch by inch. In the end, the entire space seemed to experience an unprecedented earthquake. With a boom, the surrounding endless illusion was completely torn apart. Countless rays of light, like fireworks, bloomed above the space, gorgeous and dazzling. Zhuowen stood in the same place, welcoming the scattered rays of light. His expression was calm, like a god who indifferently looked at everything in the world. When the illusion was completely torn apart, Zhuowen discovered that the illusory space he was in was actually just a ball of light, and there were dozens of similar balls of light, all suspended in the air. Below the ball of light was an endless black sea, and above the sea, there was only a long stone bridge. Zhuowen landed on the stone bridge from above. At the end of the stone bridge, he saw a towering mountain. At the junction between the stone bridge and the mountain, there was a dark tunnel. He didn't know where it led to. Zhuowen's eyes shone brightly. With a kick of his right foot, he rushed out like a bolt of lightning toward the tunnel at the end of the tunnel, instantly disappearing into the depths of the tunnel. Not long after Zhuowen left, the balls of light suspended in the air above the stone bridge seemed to be affected by Zhuowen's spiritual sword intent and collapsed, dissipating into countless spots of light. From afar, it looked as if there were blazing and gorgeous fireworks exploding above the stone bridge. Chapter 3596. At this moment, the two of them were in a sorry state. Mei Jinwen's face was pale. She took a deep breath and said, "Tianhan, what's going on?" The illusory space we're in suddenly collapsed. Thinking of what had happened in the illusory space, Mei Jinwen's face turned even paler, and her eyes were filled with fear. After they entered the nightmare nunnery, they had fallen into the illusory space. The power of the illusory space was indeed very strong. At first, they could still resist the influence of the illusory space. But as time passed, they were gradually affected. Their souls were confused, and they were somewhat muddle-headed. Just as their minds were in a daze, dense and strange soul bodies appeared in the depths of the illusory space. These soul bodies were pervasive. They actually went deep into their acupoints and began to destroy their meridians. Then, along their meridians, they surged into their souls in an attempt to affect their souls. They tried their best to resist, but they found that there were too many soul bodies. It was impossible for them to completely resist. Just as they couldn't resist anymore, the illusory space collapsed, and those violent soul bodies also collapsed along with the collapse of the illusory space. They also managed to keep their lives. Jinwen, take this healing pill first. Let's heal first before moving on. Rao Tianhan took out 2 divine pills, consumed one, and handed the other to Mei Jinwen. Then, he sat down cross-legged to heal her injuries. Mei Jinwen put down the doubts in her heart, and also sat down cross-legged to heal her injuries. Although she was very curious about the reason why the illusory space suddenly collapsed, she also knew that healing her injuries was the most important thing now. After all, it might be even more dangerous next. They had to raise their condition to the peak. Not long after, Rao Tianhan opened his eyes and stood up. He glanced at Mei Jinwen, who was still healing and didn't disturb her. Instead, he looked around at the illusory space. Bang! Suddenly, a figure descended from the sky and stopped on a stone bridge not far from them. The entire stone bridge trembled because of this. Mei Jinwen, who was healing her injuries, suddenly woke up. She opened her eyes and stood up abruptly. She looked warily at the figure that suddenly descended in front of her. Rao Tianhan's pupils shrank. He stared at the figure in front of him and discovered that it was a strange green-haired corpse. What shocked him even more was that the green-haired corpse was carrying a person in its right hand. He was very familiar with this person. It was actually Tang Taihong. Tang Taihong saw Mei Jinwen and Rao Tianhan as well, and he smiled bitterly. "Brother Rao, Miss Mei, flee quickly. This senior is very strong." Rao Tianhan glanced at the green-furred corpse with fear, and then he cupped his fists and said, "Fellow Taoist, I'm Rao Tianhan from Sanqing Street. The person in your hands is my friend. I hope that senior can give me face and let him go." The green-haired mummy laughed and said in a creepy voice, "Who do you think you are? Giving you face? What a joke." Rao Tianhan's face instantly darkened, and his heart was filled with anger. He was the strongest of the new generation in the 3 Purity Street. He was a famous figure in the 3 Purity Street. His cultivation had reached the early stage of the 4th Blight. Everyone in the Heaven Accessing place knew him. He thought that since the green-haired mummy was a cultivator from the Chaotic Street, it should have heard of his name and would give him some face. But he didn't expect that the green-haired mummy wouldn't give him any face at all. It even dared to threaten him. With Rao Tianhan's pride, how could he bear it? "Since you don't give me face, then don't blame me for being impolite." Rao Tianhan was extremely angry. He became more and more unhappy with the green-haired mummy. He immediately pulled out the ice-blue divine sword on his back, took a step forward, and turned into a faint blue shadow, disappearing in place. At the same time, cold sword chi burst out from his body. It swept out like a storm, sharp and cold. The green-haired mummy showed a mocking smile. Then it punched out and hit Rao Tianhan's divine sword. Bang! A clear, clanging sound rang out. Rao Tianhan's pupils constricted. Then, he felt a huge force pass from the tip of the sword to the hilt. Then, the web between his thumb and index finger on his right hand ruptured, and the divine sword flew out. A terrifying force poured into his body. Rao Tianhan spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. His face became extremely pale, and he looked at the green-haired mummy in horror. However, before he could react, the green-haired mummy had appeared in front of him and easily grabbed his neck. Then it threw him to the ground. Bang! The ground cracked. Rao Tianhan was dizzy. He spat out another mouthful of blood and trembled all over. The green-haired mummy stepped on Rao Tianhan mercilessly and said indifferently, "With your strength, you want me to give you face? Where did you get your confidence from?" Rao Tianhan's face was extremely red. He knew that the green-haired mummy's strength was far above his. It was probably at the late stage of the fourth blight, or even the peak. Its strength was terrifying. Thinking of this, Rao Tianhan secretly regretted it. He shouldn't have been so impulsive. He actually took the initiative to provoke the green-haired mummy. Not far away, Mei Jinwen was stunned when she saw Rao Tianhan's instant defeat. Her eyes were filled with fear as she looked at the green-haired mummy. The green-haired mummy stretched out its right hand, and Mei Jinwen, who had lost her mind, was easily caught in its hand and thrown not far away from Rao Tianhan. Tang Taihong looked at all of this and sighed in his heart. He knew that he had underestimated the green-haired mummy's strength. He originally thought that Rao Tianhan might not be a match for the green-haired mummy, but he would at least be able to keep his life. Now, it seemed that the gap between Rao Tianhan and the green-haired mummy was too great. If the green-haired mummy wanted to kill them, it could do so with just a flick of its finger. You entered the Nightmare Nunnery to find the corpse of the ancestral shaman, right? I'll give you a chance to perform. Lead the way. If you can find the ancestral shaman's corpse, I might consider sparing your lives. The green-haired mummy said indifferently. Senior, we are willing. Tang Taihong quickly agreed. Mei Jinwen also expressed her agreement. At the same time, she kept winking at Rao Tianhan. Rao Tianhan lowered his head dejectedly and whispered, "I'm willing too." The green-haired mummy nodded and tapped the space between their eyebrows. Green stripes appeared between their eyebrows. These green stripes were very strange. They emitted a bright green light and contained a very strange and mysterious power. Rao Tianhan and the other two's expressions changed drastically. The moment the green stripes appeared between their eyebrows, their souls seemed to be imprisoned by a mysterious power. This power was so strong that it completely enveloped their souls. Chapter 3597. Rao Tianhan and the other two were in a daze. They did not doubt the green-haired corpse's words. Because the moment the green stripes appeared between their eyebrows, they felt that their divine souls were wrapped by a mysterious force. This mysterious force was like a time bomb that could explode at any time, destroying and tearing their divine souls apart. Hee hee. Now, the three of you will lead the way for this king. But don't worry, as long as this king can really find the ancestral witch's corpse, this king will naturally let you live. The green-haired corpse stood behind the three, looking at their different expressions, and urged them with a sneer. Rao Tianhan and the other two were helpless and did not dare to refute. They began to walk towards the deep tunnel at the end of the stone bridge. Zhuowen walked in the dark tunnel for several hours. Gradually, he found a dim but bright light in the deepest part of the tunnel. In the second half of the tunnel, there were bright torches hanging on the walls on both sides. The flames were constantly burning, dispelling the darkness in the second half of the tunnel. In the latter half of the tunnel, Zhuowen used the light of the fire to discover that the ground was littered with the remains of many stone sculptures. They were scattered all over the place. From these remains, it could be seen that there were human stone statues, foreign stone statues, and some strange stone statues of strange beasts of unknown races. These stone statues were all dead, but every time Zhuowen came into contact with the eyes of these stone statues, he felt that they were alive. It was as if these stone statues were staring at him, observing his every move. This feeling was hair-raising. After passing through this tunnel of stone statue remains, Zhuowen finally stepped out of the tunnel. Outside the passageway was a vast valley. On both sides of the valley, there were magnificent waterfalls, like silver lines falling from the sky. Along the valley, at the end of the valley, there were huge ruins of a palace. The most conspicuous thing in front of the ruins was the standing statue. Zhuowen was very familiar with this statue. It was exactly the same as the female statue at the entrance of the nightmare abyss. They both had a human face and a snake's body, and a pair of beautiful and mysterious purple eyes. The only difference was that the female statue in front of him was much more beautiful than the female statue at the entrance. Moreover, the purple eyes were much brighter and more vivid. If the statue standing in front of Zhuowen was really a statue, Zhuowen would think that it was the eyes of a beautiful woman. Zhuowen did not hesitate. He went straight through the valley and came to the depths of the valley. The moment he stepped into the valley, the ancestral witch's goo insect in his doppelganger's body began to become restless. He knew that the nightmare nunnery's corpse should be somewhere in this valley. As he approached the front of the palace, Zhuowen's eyes casually glanced at the female statue in front of him. His attention was all on the palace behind the statue. Only when he got closer did he realize that the surface of the palace was actually covered in dense black vines. These vines were rather strange. They were constantly pulsing like the meridians in a human body, absorbing and transporting some kind of energy substance. Zhuowen followed the vines and landed at the source. He discovered that the source was at the very center of the palace ruins. There was a deep and serene cave there, and it went down vertically. Countless branches and vines grew out of the cave. The corpse of ancestral witch nunnery is in the depths of this cave. Zhuowen's gaze was solemn. When he arrived near the cave, the goo insect in his doppelganger's body became more and more restless. Obviously, the corpse of ancestral witch nunnery was definitely inside this cave. However, Zhuowen was a little hesitant. This cave was definitely not simple. There must be some kind of great danger inside. Moreover, the ruins of the palace gave him a very ominous premonition. Entering the interior of the cavern would definitely lead to disaster. I have a heaven-breaking divine weapon and a supreme treasure like the primordial stone. Even if there's really something terrifying in this cave, I'm afraid it won't be able to do anything to me. Zhuowen thought to himself. Without hesitation, he took a step forward and entered the cave. The moment Zhuowen rushed into the cave, the black vines around the palace seemed to be stimulated and retreated back into the cave. At the same time, the eyes of the woman statue standing outside the palace emitted a mysterious purple light. However, it disappeared in a flash and soon returned to its normal state. After entering the cave, Zhuowen found that it was not as dark as he had imagined. He could see clearly with his naked eye within a few miles. As he had expected, the two sides of the cave were covered with dense black vines. They were like meridians, tangled and complicated. However, the inside of the cave was filled with gusts of cold wind, causing Zhuowen to shudder in fear. In the beginning, nothing happened to Zhuowen while he was diving. However, an hour later, Zhuowen faintly heard the sound of sobbing. The sound of crying was quite far away, faintly drifting over, sounding very melancholic. Zhuowen frowned. He did not expect that there would be a cry in the cave. Furthermore, the cry was clearly a woman's voice. Just as Zhuowen was thinking this, the cry suddenly came closer and closer. Zhuowen's body suddenly froze. This was because he realized that the cry was already very close and was softly ringing in his ears. It was as if the woman who kept crying was standing behind him at this moment, close to his ears and sobbing softly. Zhuowen frowned. He suddenly turned around and found that there was no one. However, the cry still echoed in his ears. Zhuowen tried a few times but still did not find anyone. He simply ignored it and continued diving. But soon, the cry became louder and louder. In the end, it became hysterical. Then, Zhuowen felt a chill on the back of his ear, as if someone was blowing air into his ear. Zhuowen's face became gloomy. However, he did not say anything and did not look back. Instead, he quickly dived. After a while, the cool feeling disappeared from his ear. Then, Zhuan's scalp felt as if it was being touched by a sharp claw. It was as if a sharp claw was scratching his scalp. Zhuan took a deep breath. He was very calm and still ignored it. He could already feel that the corpse of Ancestral, which Kenzie, was not far away from him. He had to reach there in one go and collect Ancestral, which Kenzie's corpse. Suddenly, he began to hear strange cries in his ears. Then his shoulders sank. It was as if someone was lying on his back. A sharp feeling came from his neck. It was as if he had been cut by a blade. Zhuan's eyes turned cold. However, he still did not say anything, and his speed increased. Finally, he reached the bottom, and his feet landed on the ground. Chapter 3598. The bottom seemed to be a world of black vines. They were intertwined in a disorderly manner, and the source of all the black vines was an abnormally huge body that was suspended in mid-air. This body had a human face and a bird's body. It had a green snake hanging from its ears and a red snake in its hand. This was one of the 12 ancestral shamans, Sai. 2 green snakes were coiled around Sai's ears, and 2 huge red snakes were coiled around his arms. However, both the green snakes and the red snakes were hanging on Sai's body, motionless. They had been dead for a long time. Zhuan saw that the black vines were densely inserted into Sai's body and were constantly absorbing his physical energy. Zhuan frowned slightly, and a vigilant look appeared in his eyes. The energy of the black vines came from the body of ancestral shaman CZ. Then, where did the energy absorbed by the black vines go? Are there other powerful creatures in this nightmare nunnery? Zhuan's eyes were gloomy. He recalled the strange crying he heard when he entered the cave and the sudden increase in weight on his back. It was clear that there was some kind of living being controlling this place. Or rather, that living being had purposely led him here. Its goal was probably to absorb the energy in his body. Just as Zhuan was thinking this, the bottom suddenly shook. Then, the densely intertwined black vines suddenly rolled up and swept toward Zhuan. The moment the black vines swept out, Zhuan clearly saw countless bone fragments flying under the vines. His eyes darkened. He knew that these bone fragments were probably the corpses of the cultivators who had come down to investigate in the past. However, they had all died here and became nutrients for the black vines. Zhuan was very calm. He suddenly stirred up the energy around him, and his entire body was purple. He took a step forward, and his fists were like the wind. The black vines that were pouncing toward him all collapsed under the bombardment of his fists. All of a sudden, a tens of meters thick vine shot out from the countless black vines. It quickly shot out from behind Zhuan, wanting to wrap around him. Zhuan did not hesitate to release his doppelganger. The doppelganger punched out and collided with the vine. But soon, the clone was sent flying, and the vine was also stopped in place by the clone's punch, wriggling nonstop. Shattered godly power, the main body landed beside the clone and discovered that the clone's right fist was intact on the outside, but the inside was torn apart by some kind of mysterious power. He could tell at a glance that it was caused by shattered godly power. A look of astonishment appeared in his eyes. This black vine was actually using fragmented divine power. How is this possible? In this part of the galaxy, it was all thanks to the primordial art that he was able to use shattering divine power before advancing to the heaven-breaking stage. Aside from that, it was basically impossible for there to be any living being in this part of the galaxy that could use shattering divine power, unless this living being was originally a heaven-breaking stage elite, but had merely severed their own cultivation to descend into this part of the galaxy, just like Bing Hui. Could it be that the person behind this black vine is a heaven-breaking stage elite that came from beyond the galaxy? Zhuan's eyes flashed, and he thought of a possibility, but his heart sank to the bottom. If it was really as he guessed, then his current situation was very bad. After all, heaven-breaking stage elites were too powerful and were far from what a half-step heaven-breaking stage elite could compare to. Zhuan's main body and doppelganger immediately merged into one. At this moment, the black vine also tore through the air and ruthlessly whipped onto Zhuan's body. Zhuowen's eyes became very serious, and he suddenly waved his hands, shattering all the black vines around him. Then he suddenly punched out, and shattered godly power surged out, slamming into the black vine. Pung, pung, pung. In the instant that Zhuowen's fist came into contact with the black vine, he immediately blasted it more than a dozen times, and each time he blasted out an extremely frightening energy ripple, while the black vine was repeatedly beaten back by Zhuowen. Zhuowen sighed lightly. This black vine indeed contained shattering divine power, but was not as powerful as he had imagined. With the shattering divine power that his main body and doppelganger could unleash, he was able to completely suppress this black vine. You, a little guy that hasn't even broken through to the heaven-breaking stage, actually has shattering divine power in your body? Looking at you, you don't look like someone who severed their own cultivation. So how did you get here? In the instant that Zhuowen blasted the black vine back, a sinister female voice rang out in this space, but there was a hint of surprise in this voice. This sinister female voice was not unfamiliar to Zhuowen. It was the owner of the weeping that had endlessly rung in his ears during the process of him descending into the cavern. Pretending to be mysterious, still not coming out and showing yourself? Sneaking around in the dark, what kind of hero are you? Zhuowen said indifferently. I'm just a weak woman, so of course I'm not some hero. However, I'm very curious about you. You're clearly not a heaven-breaking stage cultivator, but you can use shattering divine power. This is extremely rare, even in the 100 outer regions. The sinister female voice rang out again, and there was more in the voice. There was a hint of teasing and interest. HM, what are you doing? You really came for this grand shaman CZ. The sinister female voice's voice suddenly changed because Zhuowen suddenly rushed out, rushing towards the corpse of the grand shaman CZ. However, the female voice clearly wouldn't let Zhuowen have his way. Numerous black vines swept out, blocking Zhuowen's path. At the same time, the black vines that contained shattering divine power instantly swept out as many as hundreds, rushing toward Zhuowen, instantly surrounding Zhuowen and covering him. Divine soul, sword intent, break for me. Zhuowen tapped between his eyebrows with his right hand, and golden light surged between his eyebrows. Instantly, a golden sword of light swept out, and under the control of Zhuowen's mind, it fiercely slashed towards the surroundings. The blazing golden light spread out, and then Zhuowen could clearly hear the female voice begin to scream in the air, seeming very frightened. Zhuowen's divine soul had already ascended to the heaven-breaking stage, and the divine soul sword intent it condensed was extremely terrifying, enough to injure the divine soul of a heaven-breaking stage cultivator. When Zhuowen was talking to that female voice just now, he discovered that this female voice was in the form of a divine soul. In addition, when he was descending, this woman had silently appeared behind him, so it could be seen that this female voice did not have a physical body. Moreover, this woman should know that his divine soul was not ordinary. So during the process of descending, she did not rashly attack and invade his divine soul. Your divine soul actually reached the heaven-breaking stage. How is this possible? Your cultivation clearly hasn't broken through the heaven-breaking stage, but your divine soul is actually so powerful, and this divine soul power is not ordinary at all. What kind of power is it? Why is it so strange? The female voice's shrill screams continuously sounded in the air, reverberating throughout the entire world below. Meanwhile, the divine soul sword intent slashed out, waving continuously in the void. Those densely packed vines were very afraid, and did not dare to confront the divine soul sword intent head-on. Chapter 3599. Damn thief! How dare you steal my ancestral sorcerer's corpse and escape from here? Come back with me. In the cave, the eerie female voice's shrill cry was heard. Then, countless black vines attached to the interior of the cave broke free like a tide and entangled toward Zhuowen. Zhuan's eyes were dignified. He made a gesture with both hands, and the sword essence of the divine soul under his feet suddenly swept out and quickly rotated around his body, forming a ball-shaped sword essence shield. All the countless black vines around him were blocked by the sword essence of the divine soul. Zhuan, on the other hand, stomped his feet in the air and shot toward the top of the cave like an arrow leaving the bow. It had to be said that the sword essence of the divine soul condensed from the heaven-breaking divine soul was really terrifying. Although it was not as powerful as Su Yuan's golden millstone and his Nine Tribulations divine sword, it was far more powerful than the Fifth Blight practitioners. Once this sword was used, even the strongest person in the heaven-accessing secret realm, 3 pure ones, would be seriously injured. The golden divine sword continued to sweep, and the sword essence was like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. All the black vines that spread over were all destroyed. Zhuan, on the other hand, quickly approached the cave entrance. This time, Zhuan's speed was extremely fast. It only took him half an hour to see the entrance of the cave. At the same time, Zhuan found that the eerie female voice had suddenly disappeared, and the number of black vines around him had obviously decreased a lot. Zhuan was surprised. He thought that the woman would attack him crazily. He didn't expect that the thunder was bigger than the rain. Although Zhuan was full of doubts, he didn't think too much about it. The golden sword radiance around him cut off the last black vines, and the sword radiance completely dimmed. He knew that the sword essence of the divine soul had reached its limit. Zhuan jumped up. The moment he was about to leave the cave completely, he suddenly had an extremely ominous feeling in his heart. A shadow suddenly appeared at the entrance of the cave, and then the shadow quickly approached Zhuan. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of him. Endless wind whistled and approached him. Zhuan didn't react quickly. He suddenly raised his hands, and purple energy emerged from his body. Bang! The shadow was very fast. In an instant, it fell on Zhuan's body and hit his hands. The power of this attack was extremely terrifying. Dense cracks appeared in the surrounding space. Zhuan let out a muffled groan and fell down. The moment he fell, he saw the true face of the shadow. It was a hand carved out of stone. He was no stranger to this stone hand. It was the right hand of the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue that stood in front of the palace ruins. Little guy, your soul is indeed extraordinary, but if that's all, you won't be able to escape from my grasp. Today, you shall become my sacrifice here. Inside the cave, the faint female voice resounded, constantly reverberating, sharp and ear-piercing. Black vines shot out from the depths of the cave, wrapping around Zhuan in an instant. They completely surrounded him and drowned him. Damn it! Zhuan's expression was ugly. The moment the black vines wrapped around him, he took out the golden coffin. Without thinking, he opened the coffin lid and crawled in. These black vines all contained shattering divine power. With so many of them added together, he would be seeking death if he faced them alone. Although he still had the Nine Tribulations divine sword, the Nine Tribulations divine sword's consumption was too great. He was afraid that before he could cut down all the black vines, the energy in his body would be sucked dry. The instant Zhuan hid in the golden coffin, he immediately felt the violent sounds of the outside world falling on the golden coffin. However, the golden coffin was a level 2 heaven-breaking flight divine tool. After all, its outer shell was abnormally sturdy. Although the black vines outside were powerful, they really couldn't do anything to this golden coffin. Zhuan sighed inwardly. His cultivation was still too low. If his cultivation was already at the heaven-breaking tier or the 5th blight, then he would immediately be able to refine a portion of the golden coffin and control a portion of the golden coffin's power. He would immediately be able to break through space and leave this cavern. Unfortunately, he still didn't have the ability to control this golden coffin. He could only barely open the lid of the golden coffin and hide inside to take refuge. At the same time, in Moyan Wushang's room in the outside world, Moyan Wushang suddenly stood up. A red light surged in between Moyan Wushang's eyebrows. Then, this red light appeared in front of Moyan Wushang, showing a vague shadow. From the figure of this shadow, it could be seen that this shadow should be a young woman. Moyan Wushang frowned slightly, looked coldly at this shadow, and said, Luo Hong, why did you suddenly come out again? Didn't I say that if there's nothing else, you can't come out? The woman's shadow was silent for a moment and sighed softly. I really didn't expect that Nu didn't die. I sensed Nu Wu's aura. If I'm not wrong, the boy you like should have fallen into Nu Wu's hands now. Nu Wu, could it be that you said, the competitor who once came to the lower realm with you? Moyan Wushang's beautiful eyes revealed a look of surprise. She had been with Luo Hong for a long time and knew that Luo Hong was a direct descendant of the Nuwa clan. Although her cultivation wasn't very strong, her status wasn't low, and they had been together for many years, so Luo Hong naturally told her a lot of things. Under Luo Hong's indoctrination, Moyan Wushang's understanding of the 100 Outer Realms was even clearer than Zhuowen. She had also heard from Luo Hong that Nu Wu wasn't a direct descendant of the Nuwa clan, but was only a collateral descendant. However, she was very talented, and her status in the Nuwa clan wasn't weak. Once, she was ordered to come to the lower realm to carry out the ruthless and selfless plan. In order to steal the credit, Nu Wu secretly followed her. Later, she found out about Nu Wu, so the two of them fought fiercely. In the end, she was defeated by Nu Wu. Her body was destroyed, and her divine soul was annihilated. If she didn't have a life-saving secret, she would have died long ago. Of course, Nu Wu wasn't any better. Her body was almost destroyed, and her divine soul was almost destroyed. Her injuries were very serious. Nu Wu had always thought that Luo Hong was killed by her, but she didn't expect that Luo Hong had a life-saving secret. In the end, she left a trace of her divine soul and lived until now. Yes, it's that bitch. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have fallen in such a miserable state. I must kill her. Luo Hong was trembling with anger. Her shadow was constantly shaking, showing that she was not calm at the moment. Moyan Wushang shook his head and said, with my current strength, I don't have the ability to avenge you. The only person who can do this is Brother Zhua. You can only cooperate with him. Chapter 3600. Moyan Wushang said calmly, do you have any other choice? If what you said is true, and Brother Zhua met Nu, you and I will be finished if Brother Zhua dies. Luo Hong was silent. Finally, she said fiercely, I'll tell you about Nu's weakness and help Zhuowen get out of this predicament. But you can't betray me. Otherwise, I'll choose to die together with you. Moyan Wushang said calmly, don't worry. I swore that I wouldn't mention you to anyone. Now, tell me about Nu's weakness. Okay, Luo Hong didn't want to drag things out. After agreeing, she told Moyan Wushang about Nu's weakness. After that, Luo Hong hid in Moyan Wushang's divine soul again and quieted down. Moyan Wushang stood up and took out a communication talisman. He hesitated for a moment and sent a message to Zhuowen. Then he sat back on the bed. Zhuowen, who was hiding in the golden coffin, also found that the communication talisman on his body lit up. He took out the communication talisman and found that it was a message from Moyan Wushang. His eyes lit up. However, after checking the communication talisman, his eyes lit up. But soon, they were full of doubts. Moyan Wushang's message was about Nu's weakness. It also said that Nu was the powerful creature in the cave that he met now. Strange. How did Wushang know that the enemy I met was called Nu? And how did he know about her weakness? Zhuowen was a little confused. However, because of his trust in Moyan Wushang, he still wanted to try. He knew that since Moyan Wushang sent him a message, there must be a reason. Although he was still confused about how Moyan Wushang knew about this, he still chose to believe in him. Zhuowen slowly stood up. His eyes shone with a blazing light as he murmured in a low voice, if the information Wushang gave me is true, then Nu's weakness is indeed hidden very deeply. Clang! A dazzling golden divine sword emerged from the void behind him. The aura that the divine sword exuded was extremely terrifying, as if it could crush the entire space. This divine sword was the Nine Tribulations' divine sword. Open. Zhuowen took a deep breath and opened the lid of the golden coffin. He slashed out with his sword, and the terrifying sword light was like a meat grinder, cutting all the black vines near the golden coffin into dust. Zhuowen took advantage of this opportunity to jump out of the golden coffin and put it into his great world. CI. The Nine Tribulations' divine sword swept out and turned into countless sword shadows, like stars in the sky. The surrounding black vines were all cut into pieces by the sword shadows. After destroying the black vines that were blocking his way, Zhuowen did not flee towards the entrance of the cave above. Instead, he continued to dive downwards, rushing toward the area with the most black vines below. Endless sword shadows burst out in front of Zhuowen, and all the black vines in his way were destroyed. Zhuowen's sword suddenly blasted a hole in the circle of black vines. As for Zhuowen, he followed the opening and charged into the depths. In the ruins of the temple, the stone statue with a human face and a snake's body stood at the entrance of the cave, slowly withdrawing her right hand. The corners of her mouth curled into an anthropomorphic sneer, and she muttered in a low voice, "This time, it's really a delicious meal. I can sense the aura of other ancestral shamans on this boy. More importantly, I can actually sense the aura of desireless on this boy. It seems that the desireless of this starry sky is in this boy's hands. I just don't know if that bitch Luo Hong left a mark on him. However, it doesn't matter. After I kill this boy, I'll open the space world on him, and I'll naturally be able to find desireless. If that bitch Luo Hong really left a mark on him, I'll just erase that mark and completely erase the last trace of that bitch from this world." Speaking up to here, the stone statue's eyes suddenly focused, and she immediately turned to look at the entrance of the valley where the temple was located. 4 figures appeared at the entrance of the valley. 3 of them were humans, 2 men, and 1 woman. Behind the 3 of them was a mummy covered in green hair. This is the end of the Nightmare Nunnery. Rao Tianan walked at the front. He glanced at the temple at the end of the valley, and his eyes suddenly narrowed. He saw a stone statue with a human face and a snake's body in front of the dilapidated temple. It wasn't the first time he'd seen this stone statue. At the entrance of the Nightmare Abyss, there was a similar stone statue with a human face and a snake's body. However, what surprised him was that the stone statue of the dilapidated temple was actually moving freely. In particular, that pair of eyes that flickered with purple light actually flickered with a lively light. Kakik, another delicacy, delivered itself to my doorstep. Moreover, there are 4 of them at once. The heavens are really good to me. The stone statue with a human face and a snake's body sneered coldly. It took a step forward and swept towards Rao Tianan. The expressions of Rao Tianhan and the other 2 who were walking at the front changed slightly. They all felt that this stone statue with a human face and a snake's body was extraordinary. The green-haired mummy frowned slightly. He didn't expect that there would be such a stone statue in the depths of the Nightmare Nunnery. Moreover, this stone statue was alive. "The 3 of you go and stop it." The green-haired mummy saw the cave inside the dilapidated temple. He guessed that the ancestral shaman's corpse was very likely in that cave. The 3 of them weren't stupid. They naturally knew that the green-haired mummy wanted to use them as bait. However, they had no choice. After all, their lives were in the hands of the green-haired mummy. They didn't dare to disobey the latter's orders. Thinking of this, the 3 of them gritted their teeth and turned into 3 shadows that swept towards the stone statue. The green-haired mummy wasn't slow either. While Rao Tianhan and the other 2 were fighting the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue, it planned to charge into the hall. Bang! 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 However, what the green-haired mummy didn't expect was that the moment the 3 of them fought the stone statue, they were all sent flying backwards and smashed into the rock walls on both sides of the valley. They were all dripping with blood and were severely injured. Damn it, these 3 trash. The green-haired mummy had just passed by the stone statue. Before he could react, the stone statue attacked again and smashed a fist on the green-haired mummy's body. The green-haired mummy's reaction wasn't slow either. He also smashed a fist. The two fists collided and released layers of terrifying, explosive energy. Then, the green-haired mummy groaned and was directly smashed to the ground by the fist. His right fist was trembling nonstop, and the web between his thumb and forefinger cracked. So powerful! The green-haired mummy's pupil shrank. Before he could sigh, the stone statue raised its leg and chopped down. Chapter 36:01. Your cultivation is clearly only at the peak of the fourth blight, but your body is so tough. How rare. The purple eyes of the stone statue flickered as it looked at the green-haired mummy slowly crawling up from the deep pit. At this moment, the green-haired mummy's face was extremely gloomy. He stared coldly at the stone statue, but his heart was inexplicably shocked. The strength of this stone statue was beyond his imagination. It was a bit too strong. It was at least at the peak of the fifth blight. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to injure him so easily. Run! The green-haired mummy didn't even think. A green light surged from between his eyebrows, and he instantly turned into an indiscernible green shadow and disappeared. Kiki, want to escape? It's not that easy. The human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue gave a sinister smile. With a stomp of its right foot, it turned into an afterimage and disappeared on the spot. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in front of the green-haired mummy and threw a punch. So fast, the green-haired mummy's face was gloomy. Without thinking, he quickly retreated and barely dodged the punch. He already knew that the stone statue was much faster than him. There was no chance for him to escape. Bang! 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 The moment the green-haired mummy retreated, the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue instantly closed in. Both of its fists blasted out like cannonballs. Countless fist shadows exploded and poured down on the green-haired mummy's body. The green-haired mummy mustered all the energy in his body and had no choice but to fight with the stone statue. Unfortunately, the gap between him and the stone statue was too great. He was ruthlessly suppressed and could only passively resist with his fists. More and more injuries appeared on his body. Although his body was terrifyingly powerful, it gradually showed signs of weakness. A terrifying blood mist burst out from his body. His injuries were extremely serious. At this moment, Rao Tianhan and the other two who were embedded in the rock wall of the valley saw this scene and felt a chill in their hearts. They had already experienced how strong the green-haired mummy was. But now, the green-haired corpse that was so formidable in their eyes was actually suppressed by the stone statue. Wasn't this a little too shocking? Just how terrifying was the strength of this mysterious, human-faced, snake-bodied statue? Thinking up to here, Rao Tianhan and the others felt a chill in their hearts. They were terrified to the extreme and only wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Unfortunately, their injuries were too serious. At that moment, it was difficult for them to even move. Moreover, there was an inexplicable suction force on the walls of the valley that firmly sucked them in, making it impossible for them to break free. Looks like we won't be able to escape this calamity today. Rao Tianhan sighed. Mei Jinwen and Tang Taihong's eyes were also filled with sorrow, but they did not say a word. Puchi, the green-haired mummy, was once again sent flying with a punch. Its chest was almost pierced through, blood splashed out, and its aura became extremely weak. Am I going to die here today? The green-haired mummy knelt on the ground, panting heavily. His injuries were too severe, and his strength had dropped drastically. On the other hand, the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue was still at its peak. He knew that he was finished. He was going to be beaten to death by the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue. The human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue slowly walked over with a mocking smile on her lips. She said indifferently, "In my eyes, all the creatures in your starry sky are ants. A mere ant dares to fight with me? Aren't you courting death? The green-haired mummy glared at the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue and said in a low voice, "You really aren't a creature of this starry sky. Who are you?" "Who I am is not important. What's important is that you will become my meal. I hope you are my liking." The human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue walked in front of the green-haired mummy and looked down at it. Then, the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue stretched out its right hand and clasped the green-haired mummy's head. Just as the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue was about to finish him off, her expression suddenly changed. She turned her head abruptly and looked at the dilapidated hall, letting out an angry scream. The human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue ignored the green-haired mummy and rushed out toward the palace ruins in front of her. Finally, she rushed into the deep cave in the palace ruins. The green-haired mummy let out a light breath and looked at the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue in surprise. He didn't know what had happened to the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue. Boom, boom, boom. Just as the green-haired mummy was puzzled, a violent explosion occurred in the palace ruins. A terrifying sword intent rushed out of the cave. The sharp edge caused the green-haired mummy to tremble all over, and fear appeared in his eyes, because he felt an unprecedented aura of death in this sword intent. There was no doubt that the terror of this sword intent had exceeded his scope of understanding. This is definitely a power that surpasses the half-step world-shattering realm. Could there be a heaven-shattering powerhouse inside the cave? The green-haired mummy was frightened by his own thoughts. Their starry sky had evolved for so many years, but there had never been a heaven-shattering powerhouse. If one really did appear, it would definitely cause a sensation in the starry sky. But now, what was the terrifying sword intent in the cave? Could it be a powerhouse from beyond the starry sky? The green-haired mummy's eyes flickered, and his expression was uncertain. Boom, boom. Suddenly, the entire palace collapsed, and from the center of the cave, an extremely sorry figure flew out and smashed into the ground not far from the green-haired mummy. The green-haired mummy took a closer look and immediately found that the figure that flew out was the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue that had beaten him half to death before. At this moment, the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue was covered in cracks, and its aura was not as strong as it was at the beginning. It had become extremely dispirited. "Damn it! How did you find the hiding place of my true body? How did you know it was my weakness?" The human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue roared angrily, almost losing its mind. The green-haired mummy followed her line of sight and looked at the palace ruins. Only then did he find a tall and straight figure slowly walking out of the endless dust. Around this figure was a divine sword shining with golden light. The aura of this divine sword was really too terrifying. As soon as the green-haired mummy came into contact with it, he felt his heart skip a beat, and his face became extremely pale. This figure arrived in front of the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue in one step and stepped on the stone statue that was struggling to get up again. "It's you." When this figure came closer, the green-haired mummy almost cried out in surprise and looked at the young man in front of him in disbelief. "Yo, Green Hat, I didn't expect you to be here too. What a coincidence." The young man looked at the green-haired mummy indifferently and raised his eyebrows, his tone rather frivolous. It's a coincidence." The green-haired mummy did not dare to look at the young man, but a stormy sea was set off in his heart, and he was almost roaring. He was very familiar with this young man in front of him. He had seen this person when he was in Witch God City. Chapter 36:02. How did he become so strong? The green-haired corpse looked at the heavily injured, human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue, and then looked at the calm Zhuowen. His mood was very complicated. When they were still in Witch God City, Zhuowen was not his match at all. In the end, he had to flee pathetically under his attacks. Now, his cultivation had skyrocketed again, and he had reached the peak of the fourth blight. He thought that if he met Zhuowen again, he would be able to capture him easily. But he didn't expect that the other party's speed of improvement would far surpass his. Didn't he see that the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue that had just beaten him up was now under Zhuowen's feet? It's that Zhuowen, not far away, Rao Tianhan and the other two, who were still embedded in the rock wall, all sucked in a breath of cold air. Their eyes were wide open, and their hearts were like raging waves. He arrived here one step ahead of us. In other words, the nightmare crisis before the nightmare nunnery should have been resolved by him. Mi Jinwen thought of something and suddenly realized. It wasn't just the nightmare crisis. After we entered the nightmare nunnery, didn't we fall into an illusion and narrowly escape death? In the end, the illusion broke by itself. At that time, I suspected that someone might have done it. I originally thought that it was the green-haired corpse that interfered, but now it seems that I was wrong. I'm afraid that it was also Zhuowen who did it, Rao Tianhan said with a complicated gaze. Tang Taihong was silent for a moment before saying, "In other words, he saved us twice." Rao Tianhan smiled bitterly and nodded. It's funny that we thought of him as a burden and didn't give him any face. I'm afraid that he didn't even take us seriously at that time. Zhuowen naturally didn't know the specific thoughts of Rao Tianhan and the other two, as well as the green-haired corpse. At this moment, his right foot was stepping on the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue as he asked with bright eyes, "I presume that you are Nu Wu." The human-faced, snake-bodied statue calmed down. She stared at Zhuowen and suddenly laughed. "Ha, that bitch Luo Hong is still alive. It seems that bitch helped you find my weakness." At this point, Nu Wushuang's eyes turned red as she shrieked. "That bitch! I've already annihilated her. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a calamity today." "Falling Rainbow? Who is that?" Zhuowen asked doubtfully. Moyan Wushang was the one who told him about Nu Wu's weakness. What did it have to do with Luo Hong? "Ha! Are you still pretending in front of me? In this universe, only Luo Hong and I are members of the Nuwa clan, and we had a great battle all those years ago. Only that bitch knows my weakness. If Rainbow Fall hadn't helped you, how could you have known my weakness? Also, you have a Heaven Breaker Divine artifact on you. Which clan are you from?" Nu Wu spat. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes, but his heart sank. From what Nu Wushuang had said, he had guessed a lot. Nu Wushuang and Luo Hong were both members of the Nuwa clan, and only Luo Hong knew Nu Wu's weakness. And this weakness was told to him by Moyan Wushang, which meant that Luo Hong was probably in Moyan Wushang's body. Perhaps Moyan Wushang's change in temperament was related to Luo Hong. Just as Zhuowen was lost in thought, the purple light in Nu Wushuang's eyes suddenly became thicker. Then it left her eyes and formed a purple line, which instantly drilled into Zhuowen's eyes. The power of the purple line followed Zhuowen's eyes and suddenly entered his divine soul. Zhuowen's body stiffened, and he stood still. Possession. Seeing this, the green-haired mummy immediately guessed Nu Wushuang's purpose. His eyes flashed, and a trace of killing intent rose in his heart. Zhuowen had been possessed by Nu Wushuang, and there must have been a struggle. This was the best time for him to kill Zhuowen. After all, this boy had the corpse of the witch ancestor. In addition, didn't Nu Wushuang say that this boy had a Heaven Breaker artifact? The green-haired mummy knew how powerful such a Heaven Breaker artifact was. If he could obtain such a Heaven Breaker artifact, he would be invincible in this starry sky. Who would be able to fight him? The green-haired mummy also faintly understood that the main reason Zhuowen's strength suddenly became so strong was probably because of this Heaven Breaker artifact. Thinking of this, the green-haired mummy's eyes blazed, and he slowly walked towards Zhuowen. As long as he killed this boy, he would be able to obtain all the treasures on this boy's body, and he would be invincible in this starry sky. The green-haired mummy's heart was surging, and he had already walked to Zhuowen's side. He suddenly stretched out his right hand and grabbed toward Zhuowen's chest. Green energy condensed in his right hand, and it became extremely fierce. The moment the green-haired mummy's right hand was about to hit Zhuowen's chest, a terrifying aura exploded from Zhuowen's body. The green-haired mummy was caught off guard, and he was blown away by this aura. He landed heavily on the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. When he raised his head to look at Zhuowen, he was horrified to find that the latter had opened his eyes. At the same time, a horrified scream came from between Zhuowen's eyebrows. The green-haired mummy was no stranger to this scream. It was Nu Wuxuang's voice. Whoosh! A purple light rushed out from between Zhuowen's eyebrows, and it quickly fled into the distance. Do you think you can escape? Zhuowen sneered, opened his hand, and caught the purple light that had just escaped. Your divine soul. Why does your divine soul have the aura of the primordial chaos? Who are you? Nu Wuxuang's horrified voice sounded. The purple light that fell into Zhuowen's palm had already become dim. Zhuowen did not pay attention to Nu Wuxuang's words. Instead, he imprisoned her and threw her into the golden ring. The reason why he did not throw Nu Wuxuang into the outside world was mainly because he was worried that it would alarm the rainbow fall that Nu Wuxuang had mentioned. If he guessed correctly, the rainbow fall was most likely in Moyan Wuxiang's body. This could also explain why Moyan Wuxiang's temperament had changed so much after he woke up. What did Zhuowen do just now? After dealing with Nu Wuxuang's divine soul, Zhuowen slowly turned his head and looked at the green-haired mummy not far away. The green-haired mummy was so scared that his legs became weak. He lowered his head and did not dare to look at Zhuowen. He said, Taoist Zhuo, I was worried that something would happen to you, so I wanted to wake you up. I didn't expect Taoist Zhuo to be so brave and powerful. You actually got rid of the divine soul so quickly. My action just now was superfluous. After saying this, the green-haired mummy struggled to stand up. He cupped his hands and smiled at Zhuowen. He said, Taoist Zhuo, if there is nothing else, I will take my leave. I still have some urgent matters to attend to, so I will not stay here for long. Zhuowen looked at the green-haired mummy's back and said, Did I allow you to leave? The green-haired mummy trembled and immediately began to escape. However, before he could escape far, a terrifying sword essence swept over and instantly pierced through the green-haired mummy's chest and nailed it to the ground. Plop! The green-haired mummy fell directly to the ground. He trembled and screamed, Zhuowen, what are you doing? I have no enmity with you. Why are you looking for me? Chapter 36:03. What do you want? The green-haired corpse sighed in its heart and raised its head to look at Zhuowen. It's very simple. Acknowledge me as your master and tell me your specific origins. Zhuowen said indifferently. Speaking of which, this green-haired corpse was accidentally released by him back then. Even now, he still didn't know the exact origins of the green-haired corpse. Moreover, this green-haired corpse seemed to need the corpse of the ancestral shaman, which made Zhuowen even more curious. You want me to acknowledge you as my master? The green-haired corpse stared and shook its head. Zhuowen sneered and flicked his finger. A wisp of white flame swept out from his fingertip. When the flame landed on the green-haired corpse, it instantly ignited its entire body. It's actually the ultimate Hanin flame. How did you get this flame? The green-haired corpse was wrapped in the white flame and kept rolling and screaming miserably. I'll acknowledge you as my master. I'll listen to you. Quickly take this flame away. If you don't take it away, I'm really going to die. The green-haired corpse screamed again and finally gave in. Zhuowen ignored it and didn't take away the flame. Instead, he said coldly, Then hand over your soul imprint. After you hand it over, I'll take away the flame. The green-haired corpse was helpless and hurriedly took out the soul imprint and handed it to Zhuowen. After Zhuowen put away the soul imprint, he flicked his finger and put away the ultimate Hanin flame on the green-haired corpse's body. The green-haired corpse's body was already charred black. It lay limp on the ground and didn't move at all. Take this pill. Zhuowen threw a healing pill to the green-haired corpse and didn't care about its life or death. Instead, he went straight to Rao Tianhan and the other two. Fellow Taoist Zhuo, we meet again. When Rao Tianhan saw Zhuowen walking over, he smiled awkwardly. Mei Jinwen and Tang Taihong lowered their heads. Their cheeks were a little hot, and they didn't dare to look at Zhuowen. They wanted to ask Zhuowen to save them, but when they thought of the ridicule and contempt they had for Zhuowen, they couldn't open their mouths. Zhuowen naturally saw the complicated emotions of the three of them. He smiled slightly and waved his sleeve. A wave of energy swept out and gently lifted the three of them and placed them on the ground. At the same time, he threw a healing pill to the three of them and said, "This is a healing pill. Take it." After Rao Tianhan and the other two consumed the healing elixir, they could indeed feel the warmth in their bodies. A warm current circulated in their bodies, constantly healing their injuries. At this moment, the green-haired mummy had finished adjusting its breathing and came to Zhuowen's side. "Greetings, master." The green-haired mummy knelt on one knee and said respectfully. The three of them were obviously still a little afraid of the green-haired corpse. Although they knew that the latter had been subdued by Zhuowen, they still couldn't suppress the fear in their hearts. "Okay, take Brother Rao and the other two out of the nightmare nunnery and wait for me at the entrance. I still have some things to deal with here. Once I'm done, I'll go out and meet up with you," Zhuowen said indifferently. The green-haired corpse nodded and accepted the order. Then it brought Rao Tianhan and the other two away from this place. After watching the green-haired corpse and the other three leave, Zhuowen came to the ruins of the temple and sat down cross-legged. He sighed lightly. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and his face became pale. According to the information Moyen Wushang gave him, he had indeed found Nu Wu's weakness in the depths of the cave. And Nu Wu's weakness was her body. The countless vines and the strange black vines in the cave were derived from her body. Because Nu Wu herself was a shattering heaven-tier elite, that black vine contained shattering god power. At that time, he had used 3 9-tribulation divine swords to finally destroy Nu Wu's body. However, he had also been seriously injured because of this. Previously, he had been holding his breath in front of the green-haired corpse. Although the price I paid this time was great, the harvest was great. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. With a flip of his right hand, a 7-colored crystal and a scroll that flowed with a strange light appeared in his palm. These two things were tightly held by Nu Wu's hands. Obviously, they were extremely important. There was an extremely powerful restriction on the surface of the scroll, which was at least at the Heaven Breaker level. Zhuowen couldn't break it at the moment. However, the 7-colored crystal was very strange. The energy contained in the 7-colored crystal was extremely beneficial to the divine soul. Zhuowen could clearly feel his divine soul being nourished and strengthened just by holding it in his hand. He knew that the 7-colored crystal was definitely a treasure that targeted the divine soul. In the wandering starry sky, any treasure related to the divine soul was absolutely priceless. Even in terms of alchemy, as long as it was a divine pill that repaired and strengthened the divine soul, its value is also far higher than same-rank divine pills. Although Zhuowen didn't know what this 7-colored crystal was, he did know that the strange energy inside this 7-colored crystal could continuously strengthen his divine soul. Perhaps he could rely on the energy inside this 7-colored crystal to make his divine soul transform again. Zhuowen's eyes were bright. Taking a deep breath, after putting away these two things, he muttered to himself, "The most important thing now is to recuperate from my injuries first." After Zhuowen took out a pile of earth-healing divine pills, he started to close his eyes and recuperate from the injuries in his body. Half a month later, the earth-healing divine pills around Zhuowen were basically exhausted. The injuries on his body were finally more or less healed. Zhuowen took out that 7-colored crystal again, his eyes bright, and said in a low voice, "I hope this crystal can really make my divine soul transform again." After tasting the sweetness of the divine soul sword intent, Zhuowen knew the benefits of a strong divine soul. Moreover, the stronger his divine soul was, the easier it would be for him to make breakthroughs in alchemy and formations. It could be said that it was beneficial to him. Zhuowen held the seven-colored crystal in his right hand. His divine soul surged out from between his brows and wrapped around the surface of the seven-colored crystal. He began to rapidly absorb the strange energy inside the crystal. At the same time, Zhuowen took out a chaos crystal from the great world. Holding in his left hand, he began to rapidly absorb the chaotic energy. Time passed by minute. In the blink of an eye, more than 3 months had passed. Suddenly, Zhuowen's eyes opened, and a strong purple intent spread out from them. At that moment, a blazing purple tide shot out from between Zhuowen's brows. It soared into the sky and instantly dyed the entire horizon purple. The purple tide surged more and more. In an instant, it completely enveloped the space within the nightmare nunnery. The countless souls that had been hiding in the nunnery of nightmares crumbled and were annihilated the moment the purple tide reached them. In an instant, the nightmare nunnery fell silent. Meanwhile, the purple tide also slowly receded and surged into the depths of Zhuowen's brows. Zhuowen's eyes flashed with a threatening light. He knew that his divine soul had transformed again. If his divine soul had only just broken through to the early stage of the heaven-crushing first transformation, then his divine soul had already reached the peak stage of the heaven-crushing first transformation. He was very close to breaking through to the second transformation. At the same time, a vast aura surged within his body. This aura soared into the sky and transformed into a boundless roar. Chapter 36:04. The seven-colored crystal was indeed miraculous. It had actually strengthened his divine sense by so much. At the same time, he was also somewhat speechless at his own appetite. He had actually directly used up the chaos crystal. One had to know that when he had broken through to a major cultivation level, only 1/3 of the chaos crystal was enough. But now, just breaking through to a minor cultivation level actually required a chaos crystal. One had to admit that his current appetite was somewhat frightening. After all, this chaos crystal was for breaking heaven tier elites to cultivate. The energy contained within was unbearable for those below the breaking heaven tier. If it weren't for the fact that Zhuowen had fragmented divine power in his body, he wouldn't have been able to use the chaos crystal. When his divine sense and cultivation both broke through, he didn't leave this place. Instead, he began to study formations and alchemy. His divine sense had become even stronger. He was confident that he could successfully set up a breaking heaven tier 1 formation and divine pill. When Zhuowen successfully set up a breaking heaven tier 1 formation, a year had already passed. And Zhuowen didn't try to refine a breaking heaven tier 1 earth divine pill. He could deduce formations and set up a basic formation. But alchemy recipes couldn't be deduced. He didn't have the recipe for a breaking heaven tier divine pill, so he naturally didn't know where to start refining pills. If I go to the 100 domains in the future, I must find a breaking heaven tier divine pill and a true breaking heaven tier formation model. Zhuowen's eyes were resolute. Although he had deduced a breaking heaven tier 1 formation, it was only a very ordinary confinement killing formation. Moreover, it could only be considered as barely reaching breaking heaven tier 1. If compared to a true breaking heaven tier 1 formation, there might still be some gap. Of course, this confinement killing array was definitely sufficient in the entire starry sky. No one could escape from this confinement killing array. He also knew that if he wanted to continue developing his alchemy recipes, then he had to go to the 100 domains to learn. After all, he was already considered to be standing at the pinnacle of the galaxy. He already couldn't learn anything in this galaxy. I didn't expect to stay here for an entire year. Zhuowen stood up, patted the dust off his body, and took out a scroll from the great world. This scroll's surface flowed with a strange light. Touching in his hand, it felt warm and soft. There was a powerful restriction on the surface of the scroll, but Zhuowen didn't try to break it, because he'd noticed a long time ago that the strength of this restriction had already surpassed his current level in the formation Tao. Moreover, he sensed an aura of danger from the restriction. Obviously, if he broke the restriction on his own, he might fall into some sort of danger. Zhuowen was very cautious as he took out Envy Wu's spirit from the golden ring. At this moment, Nu Wu's soul was dim and dispirited. Damn it, I'm a direct descendant of a Nuwa clan. If you know what's good for you, you'd better let me go. Offending the Nuwa clan is not a wise decision. Nu glared at Zhuowen angrily and threatened in an unfriendly tone. Hee, I don't care which clan you're from. Now that you've fallen into my hands, your life and death are naturally in my hands. If you know what's good for you, I might still give you a chance to reincarnate. Otherwise, I'll directly scatter your soul. Zhuowen didn't hide the killing intent in his eyes as he stared coldly at Nu Wu. Nu Wu's hair stood on end as she felt a chill in her heart. She knew that Zhuowen would really do something that would make her soul scatter. When Zhuowen saw that Nu Wu was silent, he knew that she understood her current situation. This scroll is yours, right? Tell me how to break it. Zhuowen took out the scroll and said indifferently, "This scroll is my cultivation visualization diagram. As long as you agree to let me go, I'll help you break the restriction on the surface of the scroll." Nu Wu gritted her teeth and said in a deep voice, "Visualization diagram?" Zhuowen's expression didn't change, but his heart was filled with doubts. This was the first time he'd heard of this visualization diagram, and his heart was filled with curiosity. Now that your life and death are in my hands, what right do you have to talk to me about conditions? If you don't want to break it, then I won't talk nonsense and will directly scatter your soul. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. He didn't plan to let Nu Wu go at all. After all, Nu Wu was from the Nuwa clan and was from the 100 domains outside the realm. If he let her go just like that, there was no guarantee that she wouldn't call for reinforcements in the future and descend upon this starry sky again. At that time, not only him, but the entire starry sky would be plunged into a catastrophe. Nu Wu panicked. She didn't expect Zhuowen to be unmoved by force or persuasion. If her soul was really scattered, she would really be miserable. She wouldn't even be able to enter the reincarnation cycle, and all traces of her would completely disappear from this world. Zhuowen's right hand gathered Shatter Divine Power and began to target Nu Wu's soul. If he wanted to, this palm strike could completely annihilate Nu Wu's soul. "Stop! I'll help you break the restriction on this scroll." Nu Wu gave in and quickly began to break the restriction. Soon, Zhuowen sensed that the restriction on the surface of the scroll had disappeared. He immediately unfolded the scroll and found that there was a portrait inside the scroll. The portrait was very simple. It was only a blooming green lotus. It was tender and beautiful, and it was extremely extraordinary. When Zhuowen's gaze fell on the green lotus, Zhuowen found that the green lotus seemed to be alive, swaying and shining in his eyes. This is the green lotus visualization image. It's considered a low-level visualization image in the 100 domains outside the realm. With this visualization image, it's no problem to cultivate your soul to the heaven-crushing 3 transformation. Nu Wu introduced. Zhuowen nodded and expressionlessly put away the visualization image. However, he was excited. So this visualization image was for cultivating one's soul. This would be of great help to him. "There's one more thing I need to ask you," Zhuowen said in a deep voice. "Go ahead." Nu Wu sighed softly. "You mentioned Luo Hong before. Who is Luo Hong?" Zhuowen asked the question that had been in his heart for a long time. "You don't know Luo Hong? I clearly sensed her aura on your body. Isn't she with you?" Nu Wu asked in surprise. "Now, I'm the one asking you. Tell me about Luo Hong. The more detailed, the better," Zhuowen said expressionlessly. Nu Wu was very puzzled. However, she was now under the control of others and could only obey. Thus, Nu Wu began to narrate everything about Luo Hong. At the same time, she also told Zhuowen about the plan of Wu Yu and Wu Qing. Zhuowen's face became uglier and uglier as he listened. In the end, his eyes were filled with anger. Now, he finally knew why Moyan Wushang was silent and alienated from everyone after he woke up. It turned out that it was all because of Luo Hong. Nu saw a clue from Zhuan's face. She looked thoughtful. Chapter 36:05. 1. When Zhuan entered the Ryuka station in the outside world, Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao seemed to have expected him to come and were waiting for him at the entrance. Father, mother, are you waiting for me? Zhuan asked in surprise. Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao looked at each other, and Feng Xiao said happily, Yes, Wu Shang is looking for me. She said she wants to talk to you alone. Zhuan narrowed his eyes, took a deep breath, and said in a deep voice, Take me there. I really need to talk to Wu Shang. He had a hunch that Wu Shang took the initiative to look for him. It might have something to do with Luo Hong. Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao saw that Zhuan's face was not very good, and their hearts were full of doubts. Wu Shang took the initiative to look for Zhuan. Wasn't this a good thing? Why did Zhuan look so gloomy? Although the two of them were very doubtful, they didn't ask much. Instead, they took Zhuan straight to Wu Shang's room. Along the way, the three of them chatted casually. Zhuan basically explained to Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao what he had done outside during this time. After chatting for a while, Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao realized that their son had become so powerful. At the same time, Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao also vaguely expressed to Zhuan that their Ryuka wanted to leave the outside world. It was true that the Great World did have rich resources and powerful heavenly energy. However, the outside world was only created by Zhuan. Besides the Ryuka, there were basically no other cultivators in the outside world, not even ordinary creatures. Ryuka had developed very quickly during this time, but after staying in the outside world for a long time, many Ryuka cultivators began to feel uncomfortable because they were too isolated from the outside world. Zhuan's eyes were dignified. He had also thought of this problem. After all, the Ryuka were cultivators. They also needed to communicate with other people. They needed to cultivate and live in the world of cultivators. If they were isolated from the outside world for a long time, the future development of the Ryuka would actually be more harmful than beneficial. However, although Zhuan was strong now, he had many enemies. Unless he completely eliminated all the existing enemies and then deterred all the cultivators in this starry sky. At that time, he could let the Ryuka leave the outside world and take root in the outside world. On the way, Zhuan also told Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao his thoughts. The two of them expressed their understanding. They also knew that Zhuan had many grudges in the outside world. Moreover, these grudges were all from peerless great powers. It was definitely not something that the Long family could contend against. If these grievances were not resolved, and the Ryuka rashly left the outside world, they would eventually become a burden to Zhuan. Fortunately, the two already knew about Zhuan's current strength. They knew that Zhuan would not need to spend a long time to completely resolve the grievances in the outside world. At that time, the Ryuka would be able to move out with peace of mind. Go in by yourself. Wu Shang is waiting for you in the room. Feng Xiao and Long Xiaotian stopped outside Wu Shang's room. Zhuan nodded and strode into the room. The door was ajar. Zhuan gently pushed the door open, closed it, and entered the room. The layout of the room was very simple. In the living room, there was a round sandalwood table. At this moment, a beautiful woman was sitting quietly at the round table. The moment Zhuan entered the room, the woman slowly raised her head. A ripple appeared in her calm eyes. You're here, Wu Shang said softly. Zhuan nodded and walked to the table. He sat down in front of Wu Shang. Wu Shang, you suddenly wanted to see me. There must be something you want to tell me. Zhuan stared at Wu Shang. His gaze was gentle as he continued. Don't worry. Just tell me what you want to say. I will spare no effort to help you. In the conversation with Nu Wu, Zhuan had already faintly guessed that Wu Shang's strange behavior was related to Luo Hong. Now that Wu Shang had taken the initiative to see him, he naturally wanted Wu Shang to confess everything about Luo Hong and help him get through this difficult time. Wu Shang's beautiful eyes suddenly became cold and ruthless. She was silent for a moment and said flatly, "Brother Joie, I only have one thing to ask of you. I hope that you can agree to my request on account of how much I've helped you in the past." Zhuan was startled. He looked deeply at Moyan Wushang in front of him. He felt that Moyan Wushang at this moment gave him a strange feeling of alienation. It was as if the latter had changed into another person. "Say it." Zhuan pondered for a moment and said in a low voice, "I want to leave the outside world. From now on, I will cut off all ties with you. You don't need to look for me in the future." Moyan Wushang said in a deep voice. "Why?" Zhuan's heart skipped a beat, and he couldn't help asking, "Don't you know the reason? You have already found Chen Shui. If I stay here, won't I be in the way? I might as well leave." Moyan Wushang's voice was a little cold. Zhuan's eyes narrowed. He looked at Moyan Wushang in front of him, but his divine sense quietly fell on Moyan Wushang. "What are you doing?" Moyan Wushang suddenly stood up. Her beautiful eyes coldly stared at Zhuan. "You are Luo Hong." Zhuan also stood up. His divine sense had already surpassed the starry sky. With Moyan Wushang's cultivation level, if he used his divine sense to investigate the former would not be able to detect it. But the moment his divine sense was extended, Moyan Wushang discovered it. Obviously, this was very unusual. Sure enough, when Zhuan said Luo Hong, Moyan Wushang's face changed greatly. But soon, Moyan Wushang regained her calm. She smiled and said, "Sure enough, that bitch New Wu really told you. Originally, I thought that after you found out that bitch's weakness, you wouldn't have the ability to kill her. At most, you would severely injure her, and she should be able to escape easily. I didn't expect that she would die in your hands. I have to say, I really underestimated you at the beginning." Zhuan stared at Moyan Wushang with unkind eyes. His voice was no longer as gentle as before and was filled with killing intent. "Luo Hong, you're very bold. You dare to possess Wushang's divine soul. Now I'll give you a chance. Take the initiative to come out, and I won't kill you," Zhuan said with killing intent. Moyan Wushang laughed and said, "You are really wishful thinking. You want me to leave her body and let you catch me alive? Zhuan, now you have no choice. If you don't agree to my conditions, then Moyan Wushang will die in front of you. She did so many things for you in the past. She was devoted to you. You can't just watch her die like this." Zhuan was silent. He faintly sighed and raised his head. He looked at Moyan Wushang and said, "Don't hurt Wushang. She has suffered so much. I don't want her to continue to suffer." Moyan Wushang's mouth revealed a subtle smile. She was about to speak when suddenly she felt a strong killing intent surging toward her. Immediately, a vast and incomparably terrifying divine sense rushed into the depths of her eyebrows like a tide. Ah. Chapter 36:06. Zhuan's eyes were solemn. The moment his divine soul rushed into Moyan Wushang's divine soul, he found a very faint red dot in a very obscure corner of Moyan Wushang's divine soul. When Moyan Wushang had just woken up, he had checked his divine soul. At that time, he did not find this red dot. However, he also thought that the reason why he could detect this red dot now was mainly because his divine soul was much stronger than before. The moment he found the red dot, Zhuan's divine soul instantly turned into a big hand and swept through Moyan Wushang's divine soul world, grabbing the red dot. Puchi! After the red dot left Moyan Wushang's forehead, she spat out a mouthful of blood, and her whole body trembled. Zhuan quickly put the red into the gold ring, then stepped over and caught Moyan Wushang. At this moment, Moyan Wushang was unconscious. Zhuan took out a healing pill and fed it to her. After that, he picked her up and gently placed her on the bed. After doing this, Zhuan walked out of the room. Long Xiaodian and Feng Xiao were still outside. "Why did you come out so quickly?" Feng Xiao looked at Zhuan in surprise and asked. Zhuan smiled bitterly and said, "Something happened. Mother, send some servants to take care of Wushang. She is now unconscious." Hearing this, Long Xiaodian and Feng Xiao were both shocked. How could Moyan Wushang be unconscious for no reason? However, the two of them did not ask much. Feng Xiao quickly went to arrange the servants. Father, if Wushang wakes up, remember to inform me. I will go out first, Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Long Xiaodian nodded cautiously and then watched Zhuowen leave. Zhuowen once again returned to the ruins of the Nightmare Abyss. He flicked his finger and took out the red dot from the gold ring. As soon as the red dot appeared, a blurry shadow of a woman in red appeared. However, the woman in red was currently imprisoned by some kind of power and was unable to break free. Damn it, Zhuowen, how can your soul be so powerful? The woman in red suppressed her fear and roared in a low voice. I've heard from Nu Wu that all of you are from the Nuo clan. Zhuowen ignored Luo Hong's roar and asked his own question. He felt a sense of urgency in his heart. Before this, he had already encountered powerful beings from the alternate Ghost clan and the Huxley clan. Now, there was one more person from the Nuo clan. Coupled with the covetous golden corner starry sky, Zhuowen knew that the wandering starry sky was already in a precarious situation. No matter which force it was, if they sent a large number of powerhouses to hovering starry sky, his starry sky would definitely be finished. Zhuowen wasn't particularly worried about the otherworldly Ghost clan and Huxley. As for the former, he only had some grudges with Bing Hui, and Bing Hui obviously didn't think about the primordial providence. Huxley, on the other hand, was eyeing the primordial providence of hovering starry sky. However, he was still observing and wouldn't really attack hovering starry sky for the time being. Among these forces, the golden corner starry sky was the least threatening one. Now, the sudden appearance of the Nuo clan made Zhuowen somewhat worried. Obviously, Nu Wu and Luo Hong had come from merciless desireless. When Moyan Wushang had become a desireless, they had obviously set their sights on Moyan Wushang. If the Nuo clan had only sent Nu Wu and Luo Hong, Zhuowen wouldn't have been worried. What he was really worried about was that the Nuo clan would send other powerhouses to attack Moyan Wushang. If that was really the case, things would become complicated. Since you know that I'm from the Nuo clan, how dare you treat me like this? To tell you the truth, the Nuo clan isn't something you can afford to offend. If you know what's good for you, you'd better let me go and hand over Moyan Wushang obediently. Perhaps you'll still have a chance to live. Luo Hong's eyes were filled with arrogance as she revealed her identity as a member of the Nuo clan to make Zhuowen realize the seriousness of the situation. Unfortunately, Zhuowen didn't care about Luo Hong at all. Instead, he waved his hand and a bolt of lightning fell on Luo Hong's divine soul. Luo Hong screamed in pain, and her face turned frighteningly pale. You? How dare you treat me like this? Aren't you afraid of death? Luo Hong shouted with hatred. You should be the one who's afraid now. I just need you to answer a few of my questions. As long as I'm satisfied, I'll give you a chance to reincarnate. Otherwise, I'll make your soul scatter, Zhuowen said with a cold look in his eyes. Luo Hong's body trembled. She could feel the killing intent emitted by Zhuowen when he said those words. She recalled that Nu Wu's aura had disappeared. She knew that this guy really dared to kill her. Ask away, Luo Hong said dejectedly. She already knew that Zhuowen definitely wouldn't let her go. Since she had a chance to reincarnate, she would naturally choose to reincarnate. She wouldn't really want her soul to scatter. Zhuowen said in a deep voice, Tell me about the so-called emotionless desireless. Luo Rainbow frowned slightly, then began to explain the entire plan of the Nuo clan's merciless desireless. After listening to Luo Hong's story, Zhuowen's eyes turned gloomy. The Nuo clan really did a lot of harm. In order to test out this emotionless desireless plan, they had harmed countless people in many lower realms. He also knew that Luo Hong was the person in charge of carrying out the emotionless desireless plan in this part of the universe. As for Nu Wu, she had a grudge against Luo Hong and had secretly followed her down. In the end, she had launched a sneak attack on Luo Hong and almost killed her. In the end, she had only left behind a faint trace of her divine soul. You said that there were two successful cases of emotionless desireless in this part of the universe. One of them was Wushang. Who was the other? Zhuan asked. The other was the founder of the Six Desires Palace. However, she wasn't as perfect as Moyan Wushang. Not long after she left the Six Desires Palace, she couldn't control the power of emotionless and died. Luo Hong said calmly. Zhuan nodded. He had indeed heard that the founder of the Six Desires Palace had once succeeded in becoming emotionless desireless. However, he hadn't expected that she was a failure. Aside from you, does anyone else in the Nuwa clan know that Wushang is emotionless? Zhuan continued to ask. A hint of mockery appeared in Luo Hong's eyes. She laughed and said, when I found Moyan Wushang, I was already thinking of ways to contact the Nuwa clan. Do you think the Nuwa clan doesn't know? Zhuan's eyes turned cold, and he clenched his fists. He knew that things had become really tricky now. Do you know how many people your Nuwa clan will send? Zhuan asked coldly. How would I know? I'm only responsible for delivering the message. I only know that they received the message and received the coordinates I sent. Chapter 36:07. Zhuan silently watched as Luo Hong's divine soul turned into countless light spots and disappeared before his eyes. However, his expression became more and more unsightly. He had learned a lot from Luo Hong. In particular, the Nuwa clan already knew that Moyan Wushang was desireless. Soon, they would send experts to travel the starry sky. The shortest time would be more than 10 years, and the longest time would be about 100 years. Zhuan took a deep breath, and his eyes became extremely gloomy. Before the Nuwa clan arrived, he had to improve his cultivation as soon as possible. With his current strength, it was already difficult for him to meet an opponent in the starry sky. However, he knew that this kind of strength was practically the lowest level of existence in the 100 territories outside of the world. The 100 territories were very big, far bigger than he had imagined. Just as Zhuan was deep in thought, his communication jade talisman lit up. He checked his communication jade talisman and found that it was a message from Long Xiaotian. The message was that Moyan Wushang had awakened. Zhuan stored it in the communication jade talisman and re-entered the outside world. Wana, you're here? Wushang is waiting for you in the room. When Zhuan arrived outside Moyan Wushang's room, Feng Xiao just came out with a few maids. Thank you for your hard work, mother. Zhuan said, we're all family. There's no need to thank me. Go in. Feng Xiao rolled her eyes at Zhuan and urged Zhuan to enter the room. Gently closing the door, Zhuan came to the bedside and found Moyan Wushang half sitting on the bed. Brother Zhua, you've saved me again. Moyan Wushang turned to look at Zhuan. His pale face revealed a touch of exhaustion. Zhuan sat on the stool next to him. He grabbed Moyan Wushang's right hand and checked his body. After finding that Moyan Wushang's body was fine, he was relieved and immediately said seriously, Wushang, if you encounter anything in the future, don't hide it from us. Do you know how worried we were about you during this time? Moyan Wushang lowered his head and said softly, I'm sorry. Wushang made you guys worry. At this point, Moyan Wushang seemed to have thought of something. She raised her head and said hesitantly, Brother Zhu, that falling rainbow. Zhuan smiled and said, it's already fine. That falling rainbow has already been dealt with by me. You will never be threatened by her again. Moyan Wushang was startled. Her beautiful eyes were filled with surprise. Although only a trace of Luo Hong's divine soul remained, Luo Hong was still a heaven-breaking realm powerhouse when she was alive. No matter how weak his divine sense was, it was basically impossible for cultivators below the heaven-crushing stage to kill him. But Zhuan just had to deal with falling rainbow. This showed that the might of Zhuan's strength already exceeded her imagination. But soon, Moyan Wushang's beautiful eyes dimmed. Although Luo Hong had been taken care of, her identity had been exposed to the Nuwa clan by Luo Hong. Eventually, the Nuwa clan would come for him. Although Zhuan was strong, He was only a living being in the starry sky of the lower realm. Compared to a huge force like the Nuwa clan in the outer realms, he was really insignificant. Once the Nuwa clan powerhouses descended, Zhuowen would definitely not be a match for them. Zhuowen saw Moyan Wushang's worry and said with a smile, "Wushang, don't worry. If the cultivators of the outer realms want to descend to the starry sky of the lower realm, there are cultivation restrictions. After they descend, they either cut off their own cultivation or use treasures to suppress their cultivation. As long as I'm still in this starry sky, I'm not afraid of anyone." Zhuo Wen's eyes were brimming with confidence that was hard to look at. In the chaotic starry sky, he might not be a match for a true heaven-breaking realm cultivator. But in the starry sky, he was not afraid at all. Even if the Nuwa clan powerhouses brought a powerful heaven-breaking divine weapon, they could at most defeat him, but it would not be so easy to kill him. Moyan Wushang sighed and said, "Brother Zhuo, I know about this too. What I'm worried about now is that if the Nuwa clan doesn't succeed, they might be angry and destroy the entire starry sky." Zhuowen shook his head and said, "Wushang, don't worry. Although we're in the starry sky of a lower realm, it's still a part of the primordial tree. If it's really so easy to destroy, the fruits on the primordial tree would have been wiped out long ago." Zhuowen's eyes flashed with wisdom. He had contacted Su Yuan and learned a lot about the outside world. There were indeed peerless powerhouses in the outer realms who could destroy the starry sky of an entire realm. But there were not many of such powerhouses. They were basically the peerless powerhouses behind each clan. Such powerhouses would not easily take action unless it was an extremely important matter. Moreover, the price to pay for destroying the starry sky of the lower realm was extremely high. Very few peerless powerhouses would do something as arduous as destroying the starry sky of an entire realm. When Luo Hong told Moyan Wushang that the Nuwa clan had the ability to destroy the starry sky of the lower realm, she was not lying. But she had exaggerated a lot. She just wanted to use this to intimidate Moyan Wushang. Moyan Wushang heaved a sigh of relief. The worry in his heart was finally relieved. Zhuowen was right. As long as they were still in the lower realm, the powerhouses of the outer realms could not do whatever they wanted. There were great restrictions. Zhuowen and Moyan Wushang chatted for a long time. When Moyan Wushang was tired, Zhuowen left. Before leaving the outside world, Zhuowen told Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao to take good care of Moyan Wushang during this period. The traces of Luo Hong's divine soul had been left in Moyan Wushang's divine soul for too long. She had been relying on Moyan Wushang's divine soul to recover. Therefore, Moyan Wushang's divine soul was still very weak. He had to slowly recuperate. After leaving the outside world, Zhuowen did not stay for long. He quickly left the Nightmare Nunnery. Soon, Zhuowen walked out of the Nightmare Nunnery and arrived at the entrance of the Nightmare Nunnery. At this moment, a green-furred corpse was sitting at the entrance. "Master!" The moment he saw Zhuo Wan, he immediately came forward and bowed respectfully. Zhuo nodded. His gaze fell on the surroundings of the Nightmare Nunnery, and he frowned. This was because he realized that the darkness surrounding the Nightmare Nunnery had all disappeared. To be more precise, the environment of the entire Nightmare Abyss had changed. When he had first entered, the Nightmare Abyss was completely dark. Everywhere was filled with soul-stirring Yin winds. But now, there was no Yin wind within the range of his divine sense. Green Hat clearly saw the doubt in Zhuowen's eyes. He said respectfully, "Master," not long after this lowly one and Rao Tianhan left the Nightmare Nunnery, the darkness of the entire Nightmare Abyss gradually receded. As for those souls that formed the Yin wind, when the darkness receded, they constantly howled and disappeared together. Perhaps the changes in the Nightmare Abyss are related to Master defeating the mysterious powerhouse in the depths of the Nightmare Nunnery. At this point, Green Hat looked at Zhuowen with even more reverence. The human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue in the depths of the Nightmare Nunnery was simply a nightmare to him. It was simply too strong. However, it was still easily defeated by Zhuowen. This made Green Hat full of admiration for Zhuowen. At the same time, his heart was filled with complicated feelings. Zhuowen took out the space-time roulette. After handing over control to Xiaohe, he rushed out of the nightmare abyss. Chapter 3608. The green-haired mummy was silent for a moment, then smiled bitterly and said, "Master, you're right. I'm related to Pangu, and it's not just a simple relationship." Zhuowen looked interested and signaled the green-haired mummy to continue. As everyone knows, Pangu has existed since the beginning of the universe. After Pangu fell, his soul turned into the 3 pure ones, and his flesh and blood essence turned into the 12 ancestors of sorcerers. But no one knows where Pangu's divine bones went. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and looked at the green-haired mummy. He said, "You mean you're transformed from Pangu's divine bones? But how could you look like this?" The green-haired mummy looked too creepy, like a zombie. It had nothing to do with divine bones. The green-haired mummy smiled bitterly and said, "It's true. The reason why I look like this is all because of Pangu's resentment after his death. It's basically left in my bone marrow. I was turned into this by that resentment." Hearing this, Zhuowen revealed a thoughtful expression. He did not doubt the authenticity of the green-haired mummy's words. The latter had no reason to lie to him. Moreover, the green-haired mummy's words could explain why it had been looking for the ancestors of sorcerers' corpses. "When I first unsealed you, you already knew that I was cultivating the Pangu, sacred body, right? Why didn't you snatch it from me then?" Zhuowen asked the question in his heart. "Actually, I was planning to wait for your Pangu sacred body to grow a little more before making a move on you. It's just that I didn't expect your speed of improvement to be so." Speaking of this, the green-haired mummy's eyes became more complicated. Zhuowen naturally knew what the green-haired mummy meant. His speed of improvement was so fast that even the green-haired mummy had to admit defeat. After a while, the space-time roulette had arrived at the entrance of the Nightmare Abyss. At the entrance of the Nightmare Abyss, there was a teleportation formation that was specially used to teleport people outside. Along the way, Zhuowen did not meet any cultivators. The entire Nightmare Abyss became dead silent. The green-haired mummy had told him about this. After the sinister winds in the Nightmare Abyss disappeared, so did the many treasures stored in this dangerous place. Many of the dangerous places of the past were no longer dangerous, but at the same time, there were no longer any treasures. Later, these treasure-seeking cultivators discovered that in every treasure land in the Nightmare Abyss, there was a black hole that could annihilate anything. In the past, before the Yin Wind disappeared, it had always been the Yin Wind that blocked these black holes. As soon as the wind disappeared, the powerful suction force of the black hole surged and sucked away all the treasures in the treasure land. The once treasured land had become a desolate and barren land. It was for this reason that the cultivators who were eager to enter the Nightmare Abyss to search for treasures had all left. The teleportation light flashed, and Zhuowen returned to the square from before. The square, which was supposed to be bustling with activity, was now much more deserted. As far as the eye could see, there were only sparse cultivators. The human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue in front of the square had also collapsed. Zhuowen knew that the collapse of the human-faced, snake-bodied stone statue was related to Nu Wu's death. "Fellow Taoist Zhuo, you're finally out." As soon as Zhuowen appeared in the square, someone came to find him. 3 people walked towards him. Zhuowen was no stranger to them. They were Rao Tianhan, Mei Jinwen, and Tang Taihong, whom he had met in the Nightmare Abyss. The one who spoke just now was Rao Tianhan. "Fellow Taoist Rao, have the 3 of you been waiting for me outside?" Zhuowen asked in surprise. He had been in seclusion in the Nightmare Nunnery for more than a year, and the Nightmare Abyss had undergone a huge change. He thought that Rao Tianhan and the others had left long ago, but he didn't expect to see them again. Rao Tianhan shook his head and said, "We've actually returned to Sanqing Street long ago. This time, we specially came to the Nightmare Abyss to inform Brother Zhuo." "Brother Zhuo, you'd better not return to Sanqing Street now. Hide as far away as you can. Zhuowen was startled and asked in surprise, "What do you mean, fellow Taoist Rao? Did something happen to Sanqing Street?" Rao Tianhan sighed softly and said, "Something big has happened. The tower master of the Wu Tower in Flood Street, Wu Taiji, has already surrounded Sanqing Street. It's said that in 3 days, a big shot will descend. It's said to be a heaven-breaking realm existence, and he wants to capture you by name. We only found out about this after returning to Sanqing Street. If I didn't have a way to leave, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to leave Sanqing Street to inform you." Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He thought of Bing Hui. Wu Taiji had been in contact with Bing Hui all these years. If not for Bing Hui's support, Wu Taiji wouldn't have surrounded Sanqing Street. Wouldn't this cause a huge battle between the two forces? Zhuowen cupped his fists at Rao Tianhan and said, "Thank you for coming personally to tell me this news." Rao Tianhan quickly waved his hand and said, "You don't have to be so polite, fellow Taoist Zhua. You've saved us so many times, and we haven't been able to repay you. If we can't even do such a small thing, wouldn't we be ungrateful?" Zhuowen nodded and said calmly, "Fellow Taoist Rao, are you willing to return to Sanqing Street with me now?" As soon as these words were spoken, Rao Tianhan, Mei Jinwan, and Tang Taihong were stunned. The three of them had risked their lives to inform Zhuowen so that he could escape quickly. Why did Zhuowen want to return to Sanqing Street after thanking them? What kind of situation was this? Was he planning to go back and seek death? "Don't worry, I'll take care of the Wu Tower in Flood Street. If they want to capture me, I'm afraid they'll have to prove their worth first." Zhuowen smiled. Rao Tianhan and the others were stunned. They thought of Zhuowen's performance in the depths of Nightmare Nunnery and knew that Zhuowen was very likely a fifth blight expert. However, they were worried about the descending Lord Bing Hui that Wu Taiji had mentioned. That was an expert who truly surpassed the stars. They didn't believe that Zhuowen could resist Lord Bing Hui. "If the three of you don't want to go with me, I won't force you." Zhuowen saw the hesitation on the three's faces and didn't force them. Instead, he summoned the space-time wheel and planned to let Xiao He rush to Sanqing Street. "Wait, I, Rao Tianhan, am not someone who's afraid of death. Fellow Taoist, Zhua has done me a great favor. Now that you're in trouble, how can I, Rao Tianhan, stay out of trouble? I'll go with you." With that, Rao Tianhan entered the space-time wheel's deck. Mei Jinwan and Tang Taihong looked at each other and finally gritted their teeth. They also entered the space-time wheel and expressed their willingness to go back together. The three of you are really heroes. I admire you." Chapter 3609. Within Three Purities Palace, Taoist Three Purities sat cross-legged on a cushion in front of a stone statue. His brows were slightly furrowed as he stared blankly at the courtyard in front of him. "Master, is what Wu Taiji said true? Is Bing Hui going to descend in 3 days?" Lian Meng stood beside the stone statue and couldn't help but ask when she saw Three Purities remain silent. Sanqing sighed softly and said, "Yes, Bing Hui also sent me a message, telling me to wait at Sanqing Street and not go anywhere. Is Bing Hui really that strong? Master, you've already reached the peak of the fifth blight and are already standing at the peak of this universe. Even Wu Taiji is nothing in front of you. Although Bing Hui is an outer realm cultivator, his cultivation will be restricted in the inner realm. He won't be able to display heaven breaker strength at all." Lian Meng's beautiful eyes frowned. "You're right. Bing Hui will only be able to display peak fifth blight strength in our universe. However, you might not know this, but although his cultivation has been restricted, the shattered divine power in his body hasn't changed. A peak fifth blight cultivator with shattered divine power is much stronger than a peak fifth blight cultivator like me, who only has heavenly Tao energy." Three Purities' eyes were filled with helplessness as he continued. Bing Hui's background isn't low either. He definitely has a heaven breaker artifact, and cultivates a heaven-breaker cultivation technique. I'm no match for him. Lian Ming lowered her head, her beautiful eyes filled with bitterness. How could she not know that 3 purities was telling the truth? She was just hoping for a fluke. Unless I can break through to heaven breaker. 3 purities suddenly stood up, his eyes surging with an indescribable light. Master, do you have a way to break through in a short period of time? Lian Ming's beautiful eyes revealed a hint of joy. 3 purities' eyes shone as he looked into the distance outside the courtyard. He said in a low voice, "Yes. The key to my breakthrough lies with Zhuowen." At this moment, the connection between 3 Purities Street and the chaotic universe was surrounded by numerous figures. Upon closer inspection, these figures were all foreign races, and all of them were very powerful. Apart from the Sorcerer tribe, there were also experts from the Ghoul tribe, the Space-Time Beast tribe, the Dragon tribe, the Black Tiger tribe, the Phoenix people, and the Mermaid tribe leading this group of alien races. Ever since Wu Taiji spread the news that Ice Splendor would descend to the lower realm in 3 days, the entire Desolate Street was in an uproar. Zhuowen had killed the patriarchs of the ghouls, space-time beasts, dragons, black tigers, phoenix people, and merfolk. These 5 races had long been scared out of their wits by Zhuowen, so they had no intention of provoking Zhuowen. But now that they knew that Bing Hui had come down to the lower realm, their minds became active. They all responded to Wu Taiji's call and took the initiative to send troops to surround 3 clear streets. They knew that Zhuowen would be the first to die after Bing Hui descended to the lower realm. Zhuowen was already a dead man, so they didn't fear Zhuowen as much as they did in the beginning. Oomph. It seems like there's no one left on 3 clear streets. We've already waited here for so long, but no one has come out. What a bunch of cowards. Within the Dragon Tribe team, a dragon man whose entire body was covered in dragon scales crossed his arms as a cold smile appeared on his face. Hee, I think they've all been scared out of their wits by Lord Bing Hui. Can't you see that Taoist 3 Clear doesn't even dare to fart? As the dragon man spoke, the leader of the Black Tiger Tribe, a tiger-headed man, spoke, his eyes filled with arrogance and disdain. If Zhuowen was here, he would immediately recognize the Dragon Man and Tiger-Headed Man. These 2 were Long Haoge and Hu Guanyu. When the Sorcerer Tribe, the Ghoul Tribe, the Space-Time Beast Tribe, the Dragon Tribe, the Black Tiger Tribe, the Phoenix People, and the Merfolk Tribe joined forces to attack him, they sent out 7 Third Blight experts to kill him. Hu Guanyu and Long Haoge were 2 of the 7. However, the 2 of them had escaped at the right time. They had chosen to escape during the battle between Zhuowen and Wu Haori. Thus, the 2 of them had managed to escape and were still free and unfettered even now. The 2 of them were the leaders of this siege on 3 clear streets. After all, Zhuowen had already killed quite a few of the true experts of the Desolate Streets. Hu Guanyu and Long Haoge could be considered top experts in the current Desolate Streets. This time, the 2 of them were leading the team under Wu Taiji's orders. In 3 days, Lord Bing Hui will descend to the lower realms. At that time, 3 clear streets will face destruction. Hu Guanyu's expression was filled with passion. It could be said that he held Bing Hui in high esteem. Long Haoge nodded and grinned. It said that Lord Bing Hui's main target is Zhuowen. He descended to the lower realms to kill that Zhuowen. Thinking about it, that Zhuowen won't be able to be arrogant for much longer. Just as Long Haoge finished speaking, a cold voice came from the distance. Oh, did Bing Hui come for me? Long Haoge and Hu Guanyu were both stunned and involuntarily looked towards the source of the voice. In the distant starry sky, a streak of white light quickly flew over and arrived nearby in the blink of an eye. Only then did the 2 of them realize that this white light was a flying divine artifact. And on the flying divine artifact, there were a total of 5 figures. The person in the lead was a youth dressed in black. He sat upright on the deck of the flying divine artifact and was currently staring at Hu Guanyu and Long Haoge with bright eyes. Zhuowen, the instant Long Haoge and Hu Guanyu saw this figure, Their entire bodies trembled, and a haze of fear rose up in their hearts. They couldn't help but recall the scene of encircling and suppressing Zhuan back then, as well as Zhuan's godlike, terrifying posture. The space-time roulette stopped not far away from the foreign race army, where Hu Guanyu and Long Haoge were. Zhuan slowly stood up, looked down at the two, and said indifferently, "Open a path, otherwise die." Zhuan's voice was not loud, but it was filled with powerful dignity and coldness. Long Haoge and Hu Guanyu, as well as the foreign race army behind them, all felt their hearts tremble and their eyes revealed fear. Long Haoge and Hu Guanyu's faces were ugly. They were completely unwilling to move aside and let Zhuan enter 3 Clear Street. But for some reason, when they saw Zhuan's ice-cold eyes, the two of them did not dare to disobey the former's words. Hence, Hu Guanyu and Long Haoge, the two of them, slowly opened up a path under everyone's gazes. Under the lead of the two of them, the foreign race army also moved in unison to separate to the two sides. Zhuan did not even look at Long Haoge and Hu Guanyu. The space-time roulette carried them, turned into a ray of flowing light, and drilled through the gap, instantly entering 3 Clear Street. My lords, are we going to let that Zhuan in just like that? If Tower Lord Wu finds out. A general quietly came to Hu Guanyu and Long Haoge's side and reminded them in a low voice. Humph. It doesn't matter if this kid enters 3 Clear Street or not. Moreover, if he enters now, it will be easier for us to find him. When Lord Binghui arrives, where can he hide? Long Haoge said coldly. When the general heard this, he felt that Long Haoge's words made sense. He excused himself and left. Fellow Zhua, this Hu Guanyu and Long Haoge seem to be very afraid of you. After entering 3 Clear Street, Rao Tianhan asked curiously. Chapter 3610. Fellow Taoist Zhua, you're really back. Not long after Zhuan and the others entered 3 Purity Street, a little Taoist boy hurriedly ran over. His little pink face was flushed with excitement. Are you the little Taoist boy from 3 Purities Palace? Under Zhuan's puzzled gaze, Rao Tianhan recognized the little Taoist boy and could not help but ask, "So, it's senior brother Rao." The little Taoist boy stopped and bowed to Rao Tianhan and the others. His eyes were fixed on Zhuan as he said excitedly, "Fellow Taoist Zhua, our master has been waiting for you." Are you talking about the 3 Purities? Zhuan asked calmly. Yes, my master asked me to invite you to 3 Purities Palace. He said he has something important to discuss with you. The little Taoist boy said with a smile. Zhuan did not reply. Instead, he turned around and cupped his hands to Rao Tianhan and the others. Fellow Taoist Rao, fellow Taoist Mei, and fellow Taoist Tang. I have to go to 3 Purities Palace first, so let's part ways here. The 3 of them also cupped their fists to Zhuan. Rao Tianhan said, Fellow Taoist Zhua, 3 Purity Street is already a place of trouble. I hope you can leave as soon as possible. Zhuan smiled and nodded. He did not answer. Instead, he said to the little Taoist boy in front of him, Little brother, lead the way. The little Taoist boy smiled brightly and skipped in front to lead the way. The green-haired corpse saw that Zhuan was really following the little Taoist boy and frowned slightly. However, he still followed closely behind Zhuan. Master, the 3 purities were formed by Pangu's divine soul. Pangu's sacred body is also greatly beneficial to him. You have to be very careful. The green-haired corpse could not help but send a voice transmission to Zhuan. Of course I know. However, do you think that the 3 pure ones would be able to defeat me if they were really plotting something against me? Zhuan sent a voice transmission as he walked. The green-haired corpse was stunned and immediately shook his head and laughed. He was worried for nothing. With Zhuan's strength, he was already invincible in this part of the universe. Taoist 3 purities might be strong, but he was probably not a match for Zhuan. 3 purities and Lian Ming stood in front of 3 purities palace's gate. When 3 pure ones saw the two figures walking over slowly from the foot of the mountain, a smile appeared on his face. Fellow Taoist, Zhuo is brought here. The little Taoist boy walked to the purities. 3 pure ones stroked the little Taoist boy's head and smiled faintly at Zhuo, one who was slowly walking over. Zhuo, when you're here, Zhuo, if you have something to say it. I'm pressed for time. Zhuo said indifferently. The 3 purities were not angered by Zhuo's vile attitude. He pondered for a moment and said, I'm sure you already know about the Ice Radiant's lower realm. Zhuo nodded and looked at 3 purities' palace, waiting for him to continue. Bing Hui is here for you. Once he comes down, the first person he will look for will be you. You are no match for Bing Hui. I'm the only one who can save you. Zhuo raised his eyebrows and said with interest, Oh, how will you save me? 3 purities' palace pointed at the green-haired corpse behind Zhuo and said, Give me the green-haired corpse and your Pangu sacred body, and I can take the last step to the Heaven Breaker realm. Once I can successfully advance, I will be able to use the strength of a Heaven Breaker realm cultivator in this part of the universe. However, Bing Hui is an outsider, and his strength is suppressed. He is no match for me. Even if Bing Hui wants to kill you, he will have to go through me. Zhuo fell silent and looked at 3 purities' palace. Although he knew that 3 purities' palace was up to no good, he didn't expect that 3 purities' palace wanted his Panga's sacred body and the green-haired corpse. Old bastard, do you think I don't know what you are thinking? My master won't listen to your nonsense. The green-haired corpse said angrily. Zhuo raised his hand to stop the green-haired corpse and looked at 3 purities' palace. Is the last corpse of the 12 ancestral sorcerers, Dijiang, in your hands? 3 purities' palace nodded. Yes, if your Pangu sacred body fuses with Dijiang, it will reach the perfection stage. But even so, its strength is at most comparable to a cultivator in the late stage of the 5th decay. But if you give me the Pangu sacred body and the green-haired corpse, I will have an 80% chance of successfully advancing. At that time, Bing Hui won't be able to do anything to you. This is your only way out. Zhuo said calmly, What if I say no? 3 purities' palace's eyes darkened. He sneered. You are not qualified to say no now. Lian Ming could not help but persuade. Zhuo, Bing Hui will descend to the mortal world in 3 days. At that time, he will definitely find you. Only my master can help you now. As long as you agree to help him break through, he can help you block Bing Hui and save your life. Zhuo looked at Lian Ming indifferently. He did not say anything. Instead, he turned around and walked down the mountain. However, he had only taken a few steps when the stone steps around him began to become strange. A vast array formation rippled in the surroundings and completely enveloped him. Zhuo stopped and turned to look at 3 purities' palace. He said calmly, 3 purities' palace, what is the meaning of this? 3 purities' palace looked down at Zhuo and said, I said, you are not qualified to say no now. Hand over the Pangu's sacred body and the green-haired corpse. I promise you that I'll help you block Bing Hui and let you live. Not qualified, Zhuo suddenly laughed. His laughter was extremely arrogant and wild. The green-haired corpse stood behind Zhuo and watched coldly. It also secretly sneered. 3 purities' palace frowned. He could not understand. They had already reached this point, but Zhuo could still laugh. Did he not know that he was in danger? But soon, 3 purities' palace felt an inconceivable power explode from the array below. Soon after, he discovered that wisps of white flames were surging out of Zhuo's body. The flames were too hot. They instantly covered the steps in front of the mountain gate. Ka. The vast array ripples that had originally enveloped the steps were completely destroyed by the white flames. This ghastly white flame even turned into a white snake. It attacked quickly and charged towards the 3 pure ones in front of the door. I didn't expect you to have the ultimate in fire. But don't you know that the ultimate in fire might have some effect on early-stage 5th Blight cultivators? but it is useless against peak fifth blight cultivators like me. Three Purity's palace stood calmly in place. He gently waved the horsetail whisk in his hand, and a purple power floated out. The moment the extreme Hanine fire encountered this power, it was immediately extinguished and continuously disappeared. When all the ultimate fire had completely dissipated, Three Purity's palace looked down at Zhuowen with a hint of mockery in his eyes. However, the mockery on his face was quickly replaced by shock. Chapter 36:11. The golden light between Zhuowen's brows burned brighter and brighter. Finally, Zhuowen let out a long roar as the golden light left his body and transformed into a golden divine sword. Boundless sword intent swept forth. It was far too terrifying, and the entire Mount 3 clear was trembling. Whoosh! The golden divine sword was extremely fast. In a flash, it charged towards Sanqing. Sanqing lashed out with his horsetail whisk. The sound of metal clashing could be heard as his horsetail whisk was destroyed. The golden divine sword was unstoppable. In the blink of an eye, it had pierced into his forehead. Splat! Sanqing spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression changed drastically as he hurriedly sat down cross-legged on the ground. He began to circulate the power of his consciousness to block the erosion of the golden divine sword. Master! Lian Meng snapped out of her daze and hurried to Sanqing's side. The little Taoist child's expression also changed drastically as he followed Lian Meng. However, just as the two of them approached Sanqing, a powerful force surged from Sanqing's body and sent the two of them flying. Don't come any closer. Three Pure Ones closed his eyes and panted as he finished speaking. He didn't say another word, but his expression was extremely unsightly. Cold sweat poured down his forehead like crazy. Thud, thud, thud. The crisp sound of footsteps slowly traveled over. Zhuowen slowly walked up the stairs and arrived in front of Sanqing. The green-furred mummy followed behind Zhuowen with a hint of disdain in its eyes. Taoist Sanqing, you've overestimated yourself. You don't even know how powerful my master is, yet you dare to attack him. Sanqing endured the pain in his consciousness and opened his eyes. He looked up at Zhuowen and said in a low voice, Zhuowen, it looks like I've underestimated you. I really didn't think that your strength had already reached such a level. Zhuowen looked at Sanqing in silence. He was quite surprised. He hadn't used his full strength when he unleashed the sword intent of his consciousness. Instead, he had only used 50% of it. The power of the consciousness sword intent condensed from 50% of his consciousness was infinitely close to the heaven-crushing stage, but it was also far more powerful than the peak of the fifth heaven's blight. Zhuowen had originally thought that the consciousness sword intent would be enough to kill Sanqing. However, it seemed that Sanqing's consciousness was much more powerful than he had imagined. Zhuowen, are you going to kill me now? Three Pure Ones took a deep breath, endured the pain, and suppressed his voice. Zhuowen looked down at Sanqing and said indifferently, You were the one who wanted to kill me. I was merely retaliating. However, I originally thought you wouldn't be able to kill you. But I didn't expect. When he spoke up to hear, Zhuowen stretched out his hand and continued. With the help of Lian Meng and the little Taoist boy, he reluctantly walked toward the side hall. The main hall was already occupied by Zhuowen. They didn't dare to enter. In the main hall, Zhuowen communicated with his clone in the Great World. He asked his clone to go to the place where Di Jiang and CZ's corpses were kept. He asked him to extract the goo worms from the corpses and integrate them into his body, allowing the Panga's sacred body to evolve. To be honest, Zhuowen didn't have much expectations for the Panga's sacred body. From Sanqing, he knew that the Panga's sacred body's strength was only comparable to the strength of a late-stage fifth decay expert. After all, in the ancient era, Pan Yu's peak cultivation was infinitely close to breaking through the heavens. In the end, he didn't break through the heavens. As for the Pangu's sacred body that was inherited from Panyu, it was naturally impossible to cultivate it to the strongest state. However, Zhuan was full of expectations for his main body. After his main body's consciousness merged with the primordial stone, he knew that his main body's future path would be limitless.